Out of the gates and ready to go. Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow is underway on this Monday edition following a jam-packed football weekend. Bobby Carpenter will be with us, SiriusXM Channel 84, college football analyst, former Ohio State Buckeye. Joins us in 20 minutes. Plus, Dr. David Chow, pro football doc, joins us later this hour as well as we hit all of the headlines from college and NFL. Chad, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Hutton. What a weekend it was.
It was jam-packed. Up at 6th and Peabody, our location with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Glad you're with us across the OutKick Network. It includes YouTube, where you can join Chad in the chat right now. It was on fire last week. We expect no different.
The chat never disappoints, but we've reached a different standard that we've set after last week. So much interaction throughout the week. Like, now we've set the bar here. Once we put it on film, much like these football coaches, once you see it on film, that's the new standard. That's what we want to see all the time. What I saw from the chat last week, that is what we're trying to reach each and every week on the show. So let's get after it today in the chat. I think it's going to over-deliver.
Also delivering again this week will be anything involving Michigan, Jim Harbaugh, sign stealing, and more. Because beyond just what has been out there last week through college football reporters or what we've seen from investigations that have been announced by the NCAA. Now you have Ian Rappaport and Tom Pelissero from NFL Network reporting yesterday as things are about to kick off across the league that Jim Harbaugh is not going to receive some safe harbor with the National Football League if he wants to return as a head coach there. If college and the NCAA and Big Ten and whoever else come over the top with some type of possible suspension, giving the sign stealing and the rule breaking that has taken place allegedly, but I mean, there's plenty going on with video that has surfaced and more involving Connor Stallions and whether or not Harbaugh knew. Nonetheless, it is this simple. Harbaugh would possibly, the league source says Harbaugh would need to serve some or all of any possible suspension he could face in college if he returns to the pros. This coincides with another report around the same timing from the Wall Street Journal that Michigan had pulled the new contract offer that they had slid across the table to Jim Harbaugh amid these NCAA investigations. Now, he has said that is absolutely not true, and that from the Wall Street Journal. But Chad, this goes beyond just, this is his final year. Are they going to be able to serve or send out discipline to Michigan, to Harbaugh, to the program, to what we've seen, given the nature of the sign stealing and what they can or cannot prove? This goes to suspending from the game itself if the NFL is also going to leak to NFL Network employees and reporters that they're not just going to allow him to skate back to the league if things go awry, given the allegations of sign stealing and knowing what the league did with the Patriots not too long ago.
Well, and Jim Tressel is another issue that was cited that's a direct correlation. Hilarious to think back now to all the trouble that Terrell Pryor and Jim Tressel got into with the tattoo stuff.
Yeah.
Considering that now we live in a world of NIL where no one would have cared one way or the other about any of this, but it was a huge scandal at the time. I look at this and think 5 years from now, are we still going to be saying this is a huge scandal? And I think the answer is yes, unless it can be proven that there are a bunch of other programs doing the same thing, which no one's stepping forward and saying that. And even those that say, sign stealing goes on, but I've never heard of something like this, where you go to this level of buying tickets to 30-plus games and going and filming signals from either side with what Connor Stallions is alleged to have done. 2011, the Indianapolis Colts hired Jim Tressel as a game day consultant, and they did not allow him to coach until week 7. He had a 5-game suspension through the NCAA, but then he was gone at Ohio State, so they would not let him coach until week 7, but they didn't call it a suspension. Just mysteriously, the NFL said, you'll start in week 7. So that could be the case here, where it's sort of a unspoken about yet agreed upon punishment if someone decides to hire Jim Harbaugh, that he's either going to sit or get blackballed from the NFL. That's what we're talking about here. If this report from viable NFL reporters, it's true, he's blackballed. That's an agreement amongst the owners not to hire Jim Harbaugh because of whatever punishment he's going to face at Michigan. And it's looking more and more like he's definitely going to face some punishment. And so is the University of Michigan with all the mounting evidence against Jim Harbaugh in this program. So that is one thing to consider about his NFL future. Now, in the press conference today, when asked about the contract offer being rescinded, he was a little bit wishy-washy, and he said something like, I wouldn't call that accurate, but I also can't talk about contract issues. That's a university policy. We can't talk about current contract or possible future contracts.
Until they're done.
I hear that as that's not a direct refuting of the story from the Wall Street Journal. This is more semantics. Maybe they've paused. It's not rescinded, but they've stopped negotiations right now, and that's just him saying, I wouldn't call that completely accurate, the story. Not absolutely not. None of that. So do I believe the Wall Street Journal report? Yes. I think that whatever was on the table has been halted given the latest news with Jim Harbaugh and this Michigan program. Look, Jim Harbaugh is 59 years old. If you are Michigan and you are looking out and saying, what is the worst case scenario? I've said throughout, worst case scenario is you can't employ Jim Harbaugh anymore. Either this runs him off to the NFL where he takes a job, and or it's so damning for him in the program, you have to fire Jim Harbaugh and move forward. Why is that the worst case scenario? Well, because Michigan's beaten Ohio State 2 years in a row. And because right now they are in the driver's seat for a possible college football playoff spot for a second straight year. Program's rolling. Recruiting's going well. They look great on the field. You don't want to replace your head coach when that happens. But if you are forced to replace your head coach, I'm going to give you the name right now. They should replace 59-year-old Jim Harbaugh with. It's 59-year-old Lance Leipold from Kansas. You want a guy with a squeaky clean image that has won everywhere, that can come right in and pick right up with the current roster and continue winning, and a guy that's probably looking around and saying, how do I get into the Big Two? Forget about Power 5. It's a Big Two right now. Big Ten, SEC. If you're not in one of those two conferences, you're looking over your shoulder or you're looking straight ahead at a better opportunity. Michigan is a way better opportunity than Kansas in football. And I just watched Lance Leipold beat a top 10 opponent at Kansas for the first time in that school's history since 1984 when they beat Troy Aikman in Oklahoma that year before transferring to UCLA. Lance Leipold's an awesome coach. I think Michigan could do not much better than 59-year-old Lance Leipold if this continues to go down this path.
And I think Harbaugh knows it's going to continue to go down this path. I mean, just beyond the comments about the contract offer being pulled from the table and saying, he doesn't necessarily agree with it, but wouldn't just outright deny that it happened. But he also doubled down on the statement when asked whether or not it's a head coach's responsibility to know everything that's happening within the program. And the brief answer that he gave today, I think that question probably answers itself. I was forthright with the statement right away, but you're asking, I'll just leave it at that. And the statement he's referring to is what was released, 10, 11, 12 days ago now. Quote, I have no awareness of anyone on our staff having done that or having directed that action. I do not condone or tolerate anyone doing anything illegal or against NCAA rules. That's part of the paragraph statement. And then he starts by saying, I want to make it clear that I and my staff will fully cooperate with the investigation into this matter. I do not have any knowledge or information regarding the Michigan football program illegally stealing signals, nor have I directed any staff members or others to participate in an off-campus scouting assignment. How does he not know about this? And the difference between Harbaugh and Tressel would be the head coaching opportunity. And how far does the suspension go? Is it just games, or is it behind the scenes where he can't participate in an off-season until that suspension is served? So if it's 7 games into an NFL season, is that where he picks up? Because I doubt that any team is going to go by those restrictions and hire him just to get him midway through the season. You would have him for 1 game right now if we're just using this season as an example of a possible 7-game suspension into the league, Chad.
I think that, first off, with the new NCAA bylaws and the way they're constructing punishment now, it doesn't even matter if he doesn't know. It might matter for Jim Harbaugh's NFL future if he can viably prove that he knew nothing and play this dumb card the whole time. Maybe that helps him for a future job. But with what Michigan is going to have happen to them and what Jim Harbaugh could have happen to him, doesn't matter one bit. Now, the NCAA could say after a lengthy investigation, we found no evidence that Jim Harbaugh was contacted or directly knew about it, but he should have known. That's always going to be the but at the end of this. But he should have known. They hired Connor Stallions. Other members of his staff all knew about it. He should have known, even if we can't prove directly that he knew. This is spiraling in the wrong direction right now for Michigan. I think Jim Harbaugh's comments even starting to spiral in the wrong direction for a football team that's headed in the right direction, because there's no sign of stoppage with Michigan football this year. They have been a wrecking ball through a weak schedule so far that's going to pick up here soon enough. But still, it's a possible national championship team that could get derailed and the whole program get derailed because of all of this that's going on around the program.
And we hear that the college football playoff selection show, next month, a little over a month from now. But we have the rankings that will be unveiled tomorrow evening. We'll give our prediction on that coming up later in the show. But, Chad, the other part of this is the committee for the college football playoff will not outright say it. They're not supposed to. But they'll penalize teams who lose great players throughout the season for injury. They'll try to go back and retroactively figure out what would have happened, which they can't do, had a player been hurt during said game that counts as a big win and it got hurt along the way. How will they handle this through the lens of that same prism with what's going on here with Harbaugh? More than, and because you would be looking back at wins with the knowledge that they've had scouts on campus off-site doing things to help them in said victory.
I think it's just what it's going to do is raise this constant debate about how much it actually helps. And it's going to reach the point of just making everyone sick to hear about it, because it's going to be Michigan, not just Michigan, but mainly Michigan people, and then others in football saying, oh, it's not that big of an advantage, and oh, you should have changed your signs, and oh, this and that, and oh, they still had to recruit great players and do all this in order to have those seasons, which a lot of that is true, but it doesn't change the fact that, to me, and I think to anyone that's looking at this rationally, they would have to say, you're not doing it unless it creates an advantage. You're not going to continue doing this. You're not going to continue paying for tickets. You're not going to continue handing over information. You're not going to continue having Connor Stallions in the ear of the coordinators on game day on the sidelines unless you feel like it's helping your game day operation. So if that's the case, to what extent it helped? Is it a field goal better? Is it a touchdown? I don't know. I don't know how much it helped, but it doesn't matter. You were unlawfully, illegally gaining an advantage that others weren't gaining. So everything you've done is now under the microscope. And I think every possible penalty is there for Michigan if that's the case, Hutton. We can talk about vacating all the wins and doing this and that, or just putting a huge stain over what has been a very successful period of time for Michigan football under Harbaugh.
Chad, NFL debuts don't go much better for quarterbacks than what we saw from Will Levis.
Man, oh man.
For the Tennessee Titans, who's been on the bench, not just as a backup, but a third string until yesterday. Getting his first career start, 4 touchdown passes, 3 of which went to DeAndre Hopkins. He was asked about those passes to Hopkins. He said, hey, we've been talking about finally putting DeAndre in the end zone. I said, why not 3 times? And it was his 4th touchdown that was the best, throwing off his back foot, dropping passes in the bucket, even ones that weren't caught were perfectly thrown. Debut successful for an organization that was headed in the wrong direction, sitting on a 2-week time frame, coming off a bye week and a loss in London to Baltimore. They didn't know which direction they're going. They had traded away Kevin Byard. The Oilers throwback unis were on, beautiful. You had A.J. Brown going off yet again. He's the best receiver in the NFL. They traded him away a year ago. And the guy they traded away last week is in the same uniform yesterday in Philadelphia. With all that being said, the focus, at least for a week, 4 days, is on the rookie quarterback in Will Levis and what he did on the field. Fantastic performance. This is where life comes at you fast, though, because for what they did against Atlanta, they now are on the road in Pittsburgh Thursday night against a reeling Steelers team and a very good defense compared to what we saw from Atlanta yesterday. I'm fascinated to see what happens. But for an offense that had 2 touchdown passes going into this game, we saw 4 from the rookie in what was a nearly flawless performance, even in situational moments where he's taking sacks on purpose instead of throwing an incomplete pass or throwing it up like Deshaun Watson would do. Levis is taking sacks and running clock. Fantastic job. And 3 touchdown passes for 33 yards or more. First rookie to do it in his debut.
Shout out to our fantasy expert, Michael Fabiano, who put DeAndre Hopkins on his sit list last week. And I took his advice and I put him on the bench. And it didn't matter because I still won my fantasy game. But, man, no one saw that coming.
He averaged over 8 yards per completion.
Well, no one saw Will Levis coming in and suddenly having better rapport with Hopkins than anything that Ryan Tannehill ever possessed with him in one game. It is one game. But man, oh man, what a game it was for Will Levis. He was terrific. And that offense was terrific. Suddenly, the Titans/Oilers had guys streaking wide open down the field. And Will Levis is just throwing it up in the air for them. Incredible to watch, and those uniforms should stay full-time. Go to those uniforms at all times. That color's available. Wear them at all times, please, Titans/Oilers.
Bobby Carpenter joins us next. He weighs in on the news with Harbaugh, Michigan, and sign stealing.
So there is a 26-year-old woman in Australia. Her name is Annie Knight. She is on OnlyFans. So that being said, this shouldn't be so surprising, but please wait for it. Annie is bragging about having slept with 300 people in 1 year.
What?
300. That is basically one person a day, but she didn't even space them out to that degree. She admitted to sleeping with 5 people in one day. And FYI, I say people because Annie does not discriminate. She sleeps with both men and with women. And the best part is she refers to this promiscuous lifestyle as empowering. Yeah, I'd be empowered to go get checked for STDs, but not much else empowering about this behavior. But this is the mentality that is being developed among women. They are out to prove they can do anything a man can. If you could put me on camera for this, that would be great, because I feel very strongly about this. Women are always out to prove that they can do what a man can, though it's very hypocritical, because if you ask me, because I would bet that if a man did do this and had this type of behavior that he was engaging in, women would be the first people to immediately call him toxic. Now, I would also love to know the family dynamic of Annie, because strong chances are she didn't have a strong male role model growing up, as she would have learned the degeneracy is the ultimate form of self-respect. And again, she's 26. I have no clue if and when she intends to get married, but this is going to be a hard sell for a future husband, or even wife for that matter, since she considers herself bisexual, who has even an ounce of regard for themselves. And let's be honest, Annie, if you slept with 300 people in 1 year, how many in your lifetime?
Ouch. Don't do that math. All I can think about is Wilt Chamberlain, because Wilt said he had 10,000 women. I'm like,
how do you
do the math? If you do the, don't do the math. You don't want to do the math because it's disgusting. And you go, okay, I know you're trying to brag with your boys a little bit, but 10,000.
Do you think that was real, 10,000?
That was that's the legend,
yeah,
right, of Wilt. And it's like, that's almost statistically impossible.
I mean, that's just, okay, first of all,
you don't have time for a nap.
I was going to say, first of all, it's just beyond the idea of, that's just gross.
Yes,
and,
yes, besides all of that.
That's one thing. But just, how do you, do you have to schedule appointments, or do you literally just have to go onto the street and be like, hey, you, come with me?
I've got a 6 o'clock, we got to get this in.
Because otherwise I just don't even see how, because apparently, Annie says she goes on dating apps and finds a lot of her people.
Oh boy!
So I guess you just have to learn how to build up a schedule in a way like that.
Well, my question for Annie is, why do you announce this? Why is this just for the OnlyFans? Is this does she think this is going to make her more profitable in that space by bragging about this? Because if it's true, you nailed it in your postscript, if you will. like you need to go talk to some people outside of the people that you're spending your time with.
Yeah, I think
Got a lot of issues
a
there.
lot of people are obviously looking for fame and in their 15 minutes, and I think
Yes.
for her this is her way of getting her 15 minutes. But it's just really disgusting, and I think she doesn't realize the huge disservice she's doing to herself for later on in life when she does realize.
Because those are real
what-
conversations you have with people that you actually end up spending time with.
Yeah.
Like, you don't necessarily want to go into the sordid past, but if you're bragging on OnlyFans,
All they have to
of
do is a
3
quick Google search, and then they find out. Okay, actually, you lied to me. It wasn't your 15 people like you said. It was actually 5,000
315.
in 1 year. Okay.
NFL trade deadline coming up tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern. Hot Mike with Hutton Withrow rolls on across the OutKick network. Leonard Williams traded to the Seahawks. Get into details on that coming up. Plus, Dr. David Chow, Pro Football Talk, joins us in 20 minutes. Right now, we say hello to Bobby Carpenter, SiriusXM Channel 84. The guy's all over the place.
He is.
College football analyst and more. Bobby, good to see you, man. Hope things are well.
Hutton Withrow, thanks for having me on, guys. It's nice to see you in the same place, same time, ready to rock.
I got to give a shout out to your SiriusXM channel because I'm out running errands a lot of times on Saturday, especially for the early games at times. And that college football blitz that airs all day is money for anyone running errands where it's a red zone of audio. So you get to hear all the different play-by-play voices of the different schools, and they go one game after the other and keep letting you hear bits and pieces of games. Terrific. So giving you a shout out there, Bobby. I know you're not on that show, but you're on another show on that network.
That was actually the first. That's actually run by IMG Learfield or whoever. They have all like the college sports properties. And in like 2013, 2014, that was like one of the first things I did. They used to have analysts that would bounce back and forth and then talk about them, and then you dip into the audio. And that was like kind of one of my first national gigs, was doing that for like 5 hours. They had 2 5 or 6 hour shifts, but it was a marathon of a day.
They have someone who does it from 11 a.m. Central Time, 11 a.m. to 5 p.m., and then someone else on from 5 to 11 in 6 hour shifts. So they hand it off to the evening person who's then conducting everything throughout the night. It's great.
Bobby, so Jim Harbaugh today fielding questions about the NCAA investigation into sign stealing. He's fielding questions about the contract and whether or not Michigan's pulled that offer from what was across the table back to their side. And among other things, and also the report from NFL Network reporters, NFL Media's Ian Rappaport and Tom Pelissero, that the NFL wouldn't be a safe harbor for him necessarily if there is a suspension in place in college football. What do you make of this latest news, which there's always something new recently with this, and how big of a story do you think this becomes between now and the college football playoff?
Well, I think it's only going to probably grow with more information that begins to get leaked out. And, that's, I think the main issue here is, there's a lot of stuff that's we've heard about. I don't know if we fully, understand like the depth or breadth of it yet, of what is all true. Is there any speculation? Is there rumor? And I don't know if we'll ultimately find that out this year. That's what we're trying to determine, is the timeline and the speed. The NCAA moves at a glacial pace. I don't think anything will happen with them, but within the conference, I know there's a lot of heat being put on from the coaches and the administration, who some of the other teams don't want to play Michigan the rest of the year. I mean, I've heard that, been kind of leaked and through the rumor mill, just due to the fact, like, we're not talking about, allegedly paying players to come in and different things like that. I mean, the more you hear about it and how elaborate it was, and there's even some things that I've seen, I'm not fully convinced that all of it's real, and I want to make sure that I'm fairly safe in saying some of this stuff. But
sure,
there's a lot of evidence out there that looks overwhelmingly in the face of Michigan, and Jim Harbaugh can say that he didn't know about it And maybe he just said, hey, I don't want to hear where this stuff comes from, and I don't want to have any idea. But there are invoices when you have travel expenses and reimbursement, guys. I mean, you understand the corporate world. And this is an Institute of Higher Learning. This is big business. This is Michigan. This isn't some like high school thing where you give someone $50 out of petty cash. I mean, there are thousands of dollars that are transferred here and that are being reimbursed. And there's people's names and signatures that go on these expense reports. And once I think some of that starts to come to light, like it's going to be really hard to say this was just one guy who was out doing this, and this information was just falling out of the air into some of the different coaches' laps.
Both polls right now, the AP and the Coaches Poll, have ignored what's going on. They're number 2 in the country after a bye week. Where do you have Michigan in the college football playoff rankings that will be announced for the first time tomorrow?
It's tough. I think a lot of people look at Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, some combination of those three in the top 3. Michigan, if you look at a lot of their metrics, game control and everything else, I mean, they've dominated. Now, problem is they have the weakest schedule. Georgia's schedule is more significant, and then they had a really nice win. The thing with Georgia you have a hard time figuring out is, okay, I watched you beat Kentucky like a drum. I watched you handle Florida, but then I watch other games where it's like, you seem kind of disinterested. You're trailing against Vanderbilt. Like there's just a lot of question marks that are thrown out there, and you're just trying to figure out like, could one of those things ultimately get you beat? How good are they? And they looked really good without Brock Bowers. That was a big question of mine: is would they be able to, handle it without their safety blanket, the guy who's been one of the best skill position players over the last 3 years? Without him, how good would Carson Beck look? And he looked pretty good.
Yeah.
You could argue that Washington has the best win, since they're probably going to beat the top 1 loss team in Oregon, which, I mean, I think for my money, I think Oregon's still the best team in the Pac-12 from what I've seen. And Washington the last 2 weeks has looked rough on offense and then rough on defense. Ohio State probably has the 2 best wins in conjuncture. They've looked pretty good in the last handful of weeks, and things have been trending in the right direction. I mean, I think this is probably as wide open as it's ever been. I would think it just depends on what they stink in value. Like, I feel like that they build it out and then they find a narrative for each different team. I would think that Georgia, with that win over Florida, has a good chance of being number 1. I think Ohio State, with their strength of schedule, be number 2, followed by Michigan, and most likely Washington, unless they penalize them for the last couple of weeks.
You mentioned Oregon and Washington, Bobby, and what a tale of 2 different directions teams have gone since that narrow win for Washington. The Huskies continue to find ways to hang on, but it has not looked good since that win against Oregon. Oregon, meanwhile, takes that adversity from that loss, and they shell Utah on the road this weekend. That was impressive. I'm more impressed by the Oregon defense in that game coming away from that. What do you think about those 2 teams right now at the top of the Pac-12?
Well, the thing with Oregon, and this is why I was a big fan of Washington earlier in the year. A running back, they lost him for the season. I was curious how good that defense was, and they hadn't really played anybody. And they got enough stops against Oregon, and believe me, they stopped them 3 times on 4th down, which if one of those goes the other way, they probably don't win. They hold them up enough at the end of the game to force a field goal, 45 some odd yards, which Oregon misses. And, they were at home, so you give them a little bit of credit for that as well. But Oregon, I think they can run it, they can throw it if they need to, and they can play defense. And they have things that travel on the road. That's why they went into a very difficult place to play in Salt Lake against a really well-coached team. Now, I understand that, the quarterback situation has been a little in flux, and they're moving forward, obviously, and there's some issues there. But, Utah is well-coached, and they can run the football, and they play really good defense. And Oregon went in there, they ran it on them, they threw it on them, they played really sound defense all on the road. And so I think what Dan Lanning has built there is something that, they maybe lost to Washington, but I guarantee you Washington does not want to have a rematch in the Pac-12 championship.
So I want to stay in the Pac-12 for 1. Cal electing to go for 2 and to take the lead in that moment. I hate this call so much for this reason. There's still a minute left in the game, and there's Caleb Williams. I think kicking the extra point makes it more likely that you're at least going to overtime if there's an incompletion or a play where you're tackled in play, because you're putting everything on USC to go down and score, which they're probably going to do, at least get a field goal attempt late in that game. I don't like it one bit. Cal ends up losing because they don't get the 2-point conversion. What did you make of that decision from Justin Wilcox?
So generally when I look at this and I try to figure out, going for two, I've always been a proponent of it. And here's why, especially when you're a game like that, you're not expected to be there if you're Cal. USC, what is the worst part of their team? Well, it's overwhelmingly their defense. So I'm going to force them to try to stop us. Now, like you said, there was enough time left where Cal or USC could probably drive down and score. But when it comes to end of game overtime situations, if you have the ball last and you're in a high scoring game and the other team's defense isn't very good, I'm not going to let you beat me with your Heisman Trophy winner. I'm going to try to force you to beat me with your defense. Unfortunately, it didn't turn out for them the way that they would have liked, and USC comes away with the win. And like you said, there's enough time left that maybe they still get the field goal. But generally in that situation, if it's a high-scoring, high-offensive game, I'm going to not let your offense back on the field.
Yeah, I get it if there's 4 seconds left, right? If it's like a last-second thing, it's like, you know what? We don't want to go into overtime. We're going to end this thing right here. But with a minute left, all you're doing is putting the onus back on Caleb Williams and USC's offense to suddenly have to score and not even think about taking a knee or not forcing the issue to go into overtime. Hutton, I hated it for that reason.
Yeah. Bobby Carpenter with us. Bobby, what's going to happen in the Big 12, having watched Oklahoma lose to Kansas?
I don't know. There's a chance, and I was having this conversation earlier today with a friend of mine, just trying to figure out, could the Big 12 ultimately get left out? Could the Pac-12 get left out, depending on how these things break and if there's any cannibalization? Kansas, they did a great job. I mean, they're doing it with their backup quarterback. Jaden Daniels didn't play, so Bean went in there. He played well. They had the lead. They gave it back. There's this weather delay. There's all these different components in Kansas. I give them a lot of credit. They went and won it. And if you look at the Big 12 standings, there's either 4 or I think maybe 5 teams that have only 1 loss, and Kansas has 2, sitting right there at 3-2. But it is a log jam at the top because you got to remember the non-conference factor piece doesn't come into play when you start talking about all these tiebreakers. So I'm just curious to see who the heck the 2 teams are ultimately going to be representing the Big 12 in that title game.
What do you make of Ole Miss? Are they factoring into any decision-making process for you yet? Because a week from this coming Saturday, they're playing Georgia.
I like what they can do. Lane, they want to line up. They're spread you out. They'll run you. They want to be a tough team. No one's really talked about them yet because honestly, this is the first year I think the SEC really hasn't got a ton of attention because outside of Georgia, I don't know if people really looked at anyone as a true national title contender. Yeah. I think Bama probably is, and I think Ole Miss could potentially be. This would be a huge week for them to ultimately get a win. You would think that they're potentially getting Georgia at the right time, but Georgia looks really good. I mean, it seemed like they would be falling off without Brock Bowers. I'd rather play him without him than with him.
For sure.
Ole Miss, they have the weapons. Like, they can go score on you. Can they play enough defense? I think the answer is yes. The thing is, everyone looks at Lane like this offensive guru that wants to throw the ball. Like, they've been running the ball pretty darn effectively this year. And if they could run it against Georgia, which that defense has proven to be a little susceptible, if you dig up a little bit of Auburn's game plan, there's some lanes there that you can get to through scheme. I know they've cleaned it up, but this isn't a team that's as near as experienced as they've been in the past. If Ole Miss can win that, then I think they're squarely in this conversation for being able to win the SEC, which you would have to imagine would get them a berth in the CFP.
Bobby, in the coaches stepping in it department, which of these did you like least? Pat Narduzzi, after the blowout loss to Notre Dame, saying, hey, we had a good team. I thought we were going to replace these guys with some good players, and apparently we failed to do that. When I watch this team now, which a lot of his players started reposting with comments when they saw that quote. Deion Sanders flat out saying, well, big picture, we got to go get new offensive linemen. I'm going to paint that picture beautifully about what's next for Colorado. Or Mike Loxley of Maryland, after getting upset by Northwestern, saying, hey, we got too many receivers out there dropping the ball and falling down. The play calls are just fine. It's the players that aren't executing. Which one did you like the least of those 3?
Mike Loxley's comments are probably the least aggressive of all of them, especially if there's, you watch a guy drop a ball, like there's evidence there to support that. Offensive line play, you can see that. It's a little bit more ambiguous. Pat Narduzzi's was, pretty direct with what he threw out there. He's a Youngstown guy. I like Pat on a personal level. If I was one of his players, I'd be really, really ticked off at that, saying, we thought we had a good team. We had to replacing the guys that have left. I think that was probably the one that was the most aggressive. I think the thing that's surprising me is Dion, who's a grinder, thinking like you can have success without having a good offensive or defensive line. I mean, that's been their issue all season. He probably knew it coming in, and maybe it takes longer to address. But I think there's a little bit of detachment of understanding, like, hey, you can have all the receivers in the world, man. But if you can't run the football and protect your quarterback, as good as Shador's been this year, like you could have some serious issues. But I'd say it's probably Pat.
Clemson's 7th loss in their last 12 games, Bobby. Final 30 seconds here. What do you make of the Tigers and where they're headed?
Well, if you look at who they have left, they have North Carolina, they have South Carolina on their schedule. They play Notre Dame this weekend. Like, if you're telling me that they can win 2 of those 3, I think I might be impressed based upon what I've seen. And I think at the beginning of the year, they were better. They've just kind of spiraled and they've lost that era of invincibility. I'm not, I don't want to say it's over for Dabo there, because I don't think that that's the case. I
Right.
never want to overreact to one season. But if you look over the last year and a half, 2 years, 2.5 years, like, there's been a little bit of an erosion of that culture where we had them equal with Bama for a 5-6 year period.
No doubt, man.
I mean, that's where they were.
Now it's in question, and it's crazy. Bobby, we're up against it. Thank you, man. We always enjoy the perspective coming off the weekend.
Thank you.
Dr. David Chow is next. Pro Football Doc joins us next right here on Hot Mic with Ed and Withrow across the OutKick Network.
I'm here at the Big Machine Music City Grand Prix, but that's not the only big race that's on people's minds. Let's go talk about it.
There's no way Biden can win again. There's just no way. Even the people that voted for him because they didn't like Trump, now at least have to see, like, senile, not all there, probably won't be alive for 4 more years.
Are you a Trump guy? Or are you a DeSantis guy? Or someone else?
I don't like any of them.
Who's your dream candidate? Who would you want to run?
Myself. I think the best candidates probably are smart enough not to run.
I just hope there's somebody that's young enough to care about the country instead of their politics.
My fear is they get Gavin Newsom from California. I think it would be the new cool vote for the younger people, and that's what I don't like.
Who do you think on the Republican side would be able to take on Gavin Newsom?
Great question. As a Republican registered, I love what Trump's body of work did, but they're just out to get him and destroy him, and we won't get things done, which is crappy for me to say. I thought DeSantis was going to be the guy. Trump only has 4 years left. He cannot fix everything that just happened in 4 years. And he's going to be battling indictments and all these false stuff for the next 4 years. We won't get anything done. And it'll just be the stalemate in America. That's why I almost don't want him in. But if he is the leading candidate, that's who I'm going to vote for.
Is there any Democrat that you would vote for, consider voting for?
Absolutely not.
What about RFK Jr.?
No.
Who should our first female president be?
Michelle Obama, of course. Yeah.
I'm going to go with Harambe 2024.
We have the 2024 presidential race coming up, and I wanted to see who you thought your favorite TV characters would vote for. Homer Simpson, like, who do you think he would vote for?
Donald Trump, all the way.
Vito Corleone.
Whoa. Whoever advances the cause of the Corleone family. Yeah.
Tony Soprano. If Tony Soprano is voting in the 2024 election, who do you think he's voting for?
I'm going to go Ron DeSantis.
Okay, why do you think that?
Just seems like a Ron DeSantis kind of guy.
Is this a meatball joke that you're trying to make right now? What about Homer Simpson?
Homer would vote for Biden because he's a dope.
Who do you think Napoleon Dynamite would vote for?
That's a good question. I actually don't know.
There's a right answer here.
He's voting for himself or Pedro.
There's a Viking show, I think.
Okay.
Maybe that's Hulu. I don't know.
So in the Viking show, whatever the main character is, who do you think they would vote for in 2024?
Probably a goat or a dog.
I think we have one of those in office right now. So who do you think Jon Snow would vote for in this upcoming election?
I'm going to say Donald J. Trump.
Why do you think so?
because Game of Thrones is all about drama, and Trump comes with the drama, baby.
Would you vote for Trump from jail?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, probably. Because at that point, what else do you have to lose?
Okay, would you vote for Trump from a jail cell?
Yeah, baby, I will get Trump out of jail.
Would you vote for Trump in jail?
Oh, yeah.
Based as
The thing that Trump needs to remember is there's another political figure that said, I don't recall very well.
Yeah.
And that's all he's got to say.
Is there like a dream candidate, someone that you think could like save us all?
Yeah, Jesus.
Amen to that.
What a week 8 across the NFL. Some season-saving performances, quite frankly. Saw one here in Nashville. The Titans beat the Atlanta Falcons with Will Levis at quarterback. It was phenomenal. And then what the Bengals did on the road against San Francisco. Third straight loss for the 49ers, but Joe Burrow with a great performance for him this year. Then some big injuries. Hot Mike with Hutney Withrow rolls on across the OutKick network. We say hello to the injury expert, Pro Football Doc, Dr. David Chow with us. Always great to have you on, Doc. Hope things are well, man.
Thank you, but I hate to be the bearer of bad news all the time.
Go ahead.
You know?
Yeah, well, I mean, but we go to you
Sometimes
for
it's good news.
Yeah, sometimes it's good news.
Sometimes you can encourage us with your analysis.
I mean,
Not all bad.
The last time you joined us, if I'm not mistaken, the good news was you thought Aaron Rodgers could return and be well ahead of schedule, and then weeks later, all of a sudden, that's a headline because Rodgers is ahead of schedule. So it's not always bad news.
And you guys thought it probably, and most of the listeners thought I was crazy, right? Why are you saying that that's possible? I think it is possible. And but of course, the Jets still have to get to the playoffs, and Zach Wilson has to be the guy to take them there, et cetera. But yeah, it's getting closer, but not there yet.
Some notable names going down this weekend. Busy day for you yesterday. Let's start with Kirk Cousins. Achilles injury. Speaking of those, and tying it in with Rodgers, the timing's everything. And just awful news for him, for the Vikings, but also where he is contractually. Tell us about what you saw and the significance of this.
Well, it was in some ways similar to Aaron Rodgers. It was pretty apparent it was Achilles. I was texting with some national media members. I won't say who was texting me and say, how sure are you? I said 99.9. I mean, that's what the video looked like. The big difference between Aaron Rodgers and Kirk Cousins is time of the season. So no, Aaron Rodgers has a outside chance to come back. Kirk Cousins does not. And also Kirk, it's his back foot. So it's some more of the push-off side, makes it a little harder. But he still sets up fine, I believe, for next season, wherever he needs to go. And in the end, he's not a cornerback. He's not a running back. He's still a quarterback. So he still can be ready for 2024, just not this season in any way, shape, or form.
The trade deadline tomorrow, we're going to be tying in a lot of this later in the show. As far as rehab is concerned, everything's different. But from what you've seen of Kyler Murray and knowing it's been, 10 months since the injury in Arizona, given the time frame and the fact that he's practicing, tells you what about his availability?
That he's making progress, that certainly he could play the game of football, but I would have serious doubts that he could be the Kyler Murray that we're used to seeing. Run, pass, out of the pocket, very dynamic situation. I'm quite certain that from the pocket, he can be quite functional. But is anyone really trading him to be a quarterback in the pocket, right? You want him both ways. And it still will take some time for him to get back to being himself yet. And it seems like the Cardinals are trying to play him against Atlanta at home, not in week 10, I guess.
It's never good when we're talking about this many quarterbacks across the league with injury concerns, but we'll kind of go, down the list here of guys and give us your analysis on where they stand now, where they could be in the future. We'll go next to LA Rams with Matthew Stafford.
Yeah, well, we made a video at Sports Injury Central that this week in week 9, there literally could be 11 backup quarterbacks starting across the 32 teams. That's literally what it looks like. Matthew Stafford is another one that we said in game at the end of the first half that looked like an ulnar collateral ligament injury of the thumb. Yes, there is a UCL of the thumb, just like there is in the elbow in throwers, but that's also the thumb and the UCL they had surgery on before he arrived at the Rams for a partial tear. He at least jammed it. He may have a partial tear again in the UCL. And he surprised us with his toughness. I guess you shouldn't be surprised at Matthew Stafford by coming back for the first part of the second half. But also he left the game, maybe more for score than anything else, but very hard to spin the ball if you can't grip it. And the only collateral has to do with grip. And I remember writing articles and doing stuff for OutKick when Drew Brees tore his ulnar collateral ligament and said, look, he's going to need surgery. And then again, once he was announced to have surgery, people said he's done for the year. And we said, no, 6 weeks. And he came back in 6 weeks. So it is a big deal. Matthew Stafford is at best iffy for this next week. Hopefully he can avoid surgery and avoid IR, but the thumb is a huge deal, as we have seen with Justin Fields.
Little more than a third of the league with those numbers you threw out going with a backup quarterback possibly moving forward, or at least this week. Another one of those teams, the Pittsburgh Steelers. What's the diagnosis with Kenny Pickett? What do you see with him moving forward?
Yeah, that's a Thursday game, and it's setting up for Will Levis versus Mitch Trubisky this Thursday. Kenny Pickett did not return to the game with rib cartilage issue. If a rib block didn't work on game day, or maybe he didn't take one, it's unlikely that he'll take one or have it work for a Thursday. So it seems to be Mitch Trubisky, although the Steelers aren't saying. On the other hand, the Titans are going to roll with Will Levis, even though Ryan Tannehill played 2 series in London after he hurt the high ankle. It's been 2 weeks since then, and this will be almost 3 weeks now, but they're still going with Will Levis. And of course, that decision is easier to make when your young guy throws for 4 touchdowns.
And with Levis, you're right, the 4 touchdown performance. Tannehill's got the ankle issue. I've tried to describe last year, he's pushing through Tannehill, I'm saying, the ankle. And he's a team first guy. There's also the free agency is right around the corner for him. He knows that Levis is the future quarterback. In your experience in your time in the NFL, behind the scenes, I mean, that the business aspect of injuries also play a factor, don't they?
No question. And even the decisions on who to play a factor. We did the Pro Football Doc Sports Injury Central podcast this morning, and we have a segment called Hiding Behind Health, right? It's Tannehill is injured and is not 100%, but it's much easier to say Will Levis is the quarterback coming off of 4 things. Ryan Tannehill, take your time. When there was a good performance there, and Tannehill's not 100%. So you simply just indicate the ankle's not ready. We're going with the young guy, as opposed to talking about it being an injury or a demotion of some sort.
You said hide behind your health. Classic example of that seems to be in Atlanta with Desmond Ridder and Arthur Smith after the game saying it wasn't performance related. He just didn't seem right. He was evaluated for a concussion. But yet they go with a backup Taylor Heineke, and suddenly the Falcons' offense looks better. Is this an example of what you're talking about?
Yeah, I think it is an example of what we're talking about, hiding behind health. And I'm not using the term in a nefarious way that they're hiding injuries. It's easier to say, no, we're not benching Desmond Ridder. He didn't have a concussion, but he didn't feel right. And so we're just giving him a break and going with Heineke, the backup, and we'll see what happens. And maybe we'll give it another week because just to make sure that he's right. It's just easier to talk that way. Another example about it has to be a New York Giants. Look, we heard about Daniel Jones, left arm weakness, not going to be ready from all the major reporters, that it would be week 10 before he came back at least. And now Tyrod Taylor goes down, was hospitalized with some rib, maybe internal organ damage. And here comes Tommy DeVito. And now we hear Daniel Jones is cleared for contact. And as a matter of fact, he was cleared for contact ahead of the game on Sunday, but couldn't play because he was declared out. There's some hiding behind health in terms of the messaging that gets put out to the public. I'm not saying that there's anything where the coaches are doing illegal, suppressing injuries or enhancing injuries. It's just using it for explanation is what it is. So Daniel Jones now pressed into service because they don't want to roll with Tommy DeVito. And here we go with Tyrod Taylor out. It's back to Daniel Jones.
You mentioned messaging. It's a great segue to Deshaun Watson here. With the rotator cuff issue, it doesn't sound like he's going to go to IR. Maybe he's back in a couple of weeks. It's the P.J. Walker show until then, and it was not much of a show yesterday against Seattle. Help us. Will you discuss for us what he may be going through on a good or bad day with the rotator cuff on the throwing shoulder? Is it residual swelling? What is he dealing with that leads some to believe he's back one week and then he's out the next, and the coach doesn't want to see him take another hit?
The messaging has been interesting on that one, and I'm not blaming the guaranteed contract as the reason he doesn't want to play. Rotator cuffs are tricky. A subscap strain does have to do with throwing, and it seems like Deshaun Watson honestly thought he would play week 4. He did finish week 3, but it was a surprise inactive, and the rookie started. Then everyone thought he'd come back after the bye, and he wasn't really ready to go. And then he gets one practice, and they start him, but they quick hook him the last week in week 7. 1 for 5, 1 interception, does take a hit, but he gets the quick hook. And he was on the sideline healthy, right? The head coach of the Cleveland Browns even said if P.J. Walker got hurt, Deshaun Watson was going back in. That's why he had the helmet on. So the messaging has been different. It's my belief, having been in the NFL locker rooms and been with a team, there hasn't been certainty with their quarterback going into week 4. There hasn't been certainty coming out of the bye. There wasn't certainty in week 7 when he had the quick hook because of injury. I think they're waiting for certainty at this point in time. I don't think Deshaun Watson returns to play without 3 full practices, not just 1 day of practice and think we're okay. I think they're waiting for 3 full practices before they get him back. I think they want him back in the biggest, baddest way. They've got a great defense, but I think they need some assurity that he'll be okay and be able to finish the game before they hand over the starting job back to him.
Dr. David Chow with us, Pro Football Doc. Not football related, but Adam Johnson, former NHL player who's now playing or was in the EIHL. He died, was killed when a skate cut his throat. It's being investigated by police now in Nottingham. As far as like the protection of this goes, what do you make of that injury and the likelihood we could see it again?
Well, that's like every hockey person's worst nightmare, right?
Yes.
You know, the skates are so sharp, right? They want them sharp so they can cut on the ice, et cetera. They're so sharp, it's almost a knife, right? And when a leg kicks up and your neck is exposed and it's a very unlucky shot, that is the nightmare scenario of the carotid artery. And the carotid artery is, you know, it's under high pressure because it's an artery, and it literally with squirts. I mean, and you need to react quickly. I mean, quite honestly, you can say, okay, the doctor, but the doctor usually isn't there on the bench. And even if they are for hockey, they're in dress shoes and slipping across the ice. I mean, that athletic trainer really has to act quickly and try and put pressure in to stop the bleeding. It's a very quick, nightmarish scenario. Look, going backwards, you know, you see hockey players, hockey goalies having the neck protection for the puck in the throat. This one's almost worse because it's literally a knife blade coming across your neck there. And there obviously has been some talk of wearing, you know, turtleneck type sleeve type protection, et cetera. And I don't know if that's the worst idea in the world, right? Just for because it's potentially life and death situation. Fortunately, it doesn't happen very often, but boy, you don't ever want it to happen once.
Yeah, and they're investigating to see if it was an intentional.
I didn't see the video.
Yeah, right.
Stuff.
No, me either. But I'm saying, like, as far as the intent goes, that's up to police. But I'm thinking, man, as far as the protection goes, you see guys laying on the ice all the time, you know, due to the contact.
Deal.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, it's not the laying on the ice that typically is the danger there. It's a play, and the other player gets upended and his feet go up in the air.
Okay.
Right? When you're laying on the ice, no one's really skating across you, kind of
right.
thing. It's literally a kick up in the air when someone is upended, and it's a very unlucky circumstance. It's not the on the ice stuff that's typically the way that happens.
Great perspective as always, Doc. We appreciate this, and we will catch up soon for sure. The injuries, always game day for you in regards to your analysis.
Thank you.
There is Dr. David Chow, Pro Football Doc, Sports Injury Central as well. Where you can
That hockey deal is crazy scary, and I was thinking like you, Hutton, so many times guys are laid out on the ice trying to block a puck, and how many times, guys are around them, you don't see it. Though in that instance, there was an incident with the Buffalo Sabres goalie at one point where I know his skate came up, and there was a very scary moment. He lived, but barely. From that years and years ago, terrible situation. You don't want to see it happen once, like Dr. Chow said, but luckily we don't see it happen more often.
More headlines straight ahead, including trade deadline tomorrow, buyers, sellers across the NFL, and more.
Welcome into OutKick, the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the #1 overall pick.
Is it fair for people to be upset with Barbie?
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna lib. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose. I mean, what have you seen firsthand of how this has affected you in the plant and your fellow employees? Under Joe Biden, the Taliban has retaken Afghanistan. Putin has invaded Ukraine. So if there was ever a time for freaking aliens to inhabit and conquer Earth, now would be that time.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
I made the call to end the Me Too movement. And today I'm going to continue making that case. And that's just a way to further taunt these women, to make them feel less than, to make them realize that this has just become a big joke. Deion Sanders is the Donald Trump of football.
We were directly impacted by the whole Leah Thomas thing, and we were able to see you guys on the ground with your signs supporting. That was huge.
They were saying, oh, it's only 1 or 2. That's rubbish, and we all know that's rubbish. Once those trans-identifying males were able to succeed, it just encouraged others.
Just like that, the second hour is here on the Monday edition of Hot Mile with Henry Withrow across the OutKick Network. Glad you're with us if you're streaming the show live or listening to this great radio partner. 6th and Peabody, our location. Yeehaw Beer, Old Smoky Moonshine. Our thanks to Bobby Carpenter and Dr. David Chow for joining us in hour number 1. Chad, we've got a little coaching news in the Big Ten that doesn't involve Jim Harbaugh.
It's from Nicole Auerbach, who has the report statement from Iowa. The long Iowa nightmare on offense is coming to its conclusion. Brian Ferentz out as offensive coordinator at Iowa at the end of the season. This is a statement from, I think it's pronounced Beth Getz, who is the athletic director at Iowa. I asked Matty Ice, Iowa fan in here. He didn't even know how to pronounce it.
Wow.
So that's a strike on Matty. And quote, anyone who loves Iowa football recognizes both the success and challenges that have brought attention to our program this season. Our struggles on offense, coupled with the offensive coordinator's contract, make this a unique situation. After conversations with head coach Kirk Ferentz, Coach Brian Ferentz, and President Wilson, I informed Brian that our intention is for him to be with us through the bowl game, but this is his last season with the program. Making this known today is the best interest of the program and its loyal fans. It provides clarity during this pivotal time in the schedule. Beth Getz goes on to say, it is not my practice to be involved in assistant coaching decisions and certainly not to make public such a change during a season. Our priority is to put all our student athletes in the best position to have both short-term and long-term success on and off the field. Our football team has a group of outstanding young men and talented athletes who at 6-2 have a lot to play for. As a former athlete, I know every opportunity to put on the jersey is a cherished one. Didn't go on to explain why. It is not my practice to be involved in assistant coaching decisions and certainly not to make them public, but here I am doing so, is what she said, without saying, and here's why I did it. But she has decided to basically get in between Kirk Ferentz and his son and announce to both of them that this is Brian's last year with Iowa football, to which Iowa fans everywhere, I'm sure, are thrilled when they have to watch that offense week in and week out. The question now, Hutton, is what direction do they go? I don't think you can get totally away from your bread and butter at Iowa, which is strong offensive line, good run-based offense with great tight end play. But you got to be a little bit more diverse in your offensive approach. It can't be slow it down, snap it with 1 second on the play clock, and just smash mouth it to death. You got to be versatile in some way offensively. But I also don't think, you go hire someone from the air raid to come into Iowa. You can't go completely against identity and character, but you got to do something better.
So help me with so this is all about, to me, perception and optics, this announcement. So he's out at the end of the year, right?
Yep, after the bowl game.
As play caller.
As offensive coordinator. I mean, he's done with the program.
If it's that bad, you're not having someone else call plays now?
That's a good question. So maybe they
optics,
will.
Here's optics, and again, I'm just spitballing here. Initial reaction. Kirk Ferentz is out at the end of the year. And he's stepping down, and they don't want it to be about his son. Should I not take it that way? And by announcing this now, it's more about Kirk Ferentz at the end instead of the offense sucked and this was the ultimatum and he didn't average 25 a game. And so you brought him back and both of you are gone.
It's interesting. I don't think
they're handling it the right way is what I mean.
I don't think that Kirk Ferentz is out unless he's retiring.
That's what I'm alluding to, though. Yeah, and
I just don't know. But if you knew that, then why wouldn't you just?
But if you're announcing the, have we heard this that the OC's out at the end of the year, but you're finishing the season? That to me makes no sense.
Well, the only way it makes sense is they're having a hard time in recruiting because of this, and because she mentions the need for clarity moving forward for both their student athletes and who they're going to have moving forward. So maybe it's just we're tired. I see it as this. We're tired of being a punchline. We're tired of everyone doing the math on 25 points per game or more every week. And to eliminate that challenge of what's been a difficult season for the offense, while also acknowledging we're tied for the Big Ten West lead at 6-2 right now, let's go ahead and just announce this is it. There's no more speculation about it. No one's adding up the points per game. No one's trying to get to some elusive number that Iowa's offense is never going to get to if they play 3 seasons, when you look at the way they play offense right now, while also saying there's plenty left to play for, including a Big Ten West championship and a spot in the Big Ten championship game. That, to me, makes the most sense. It's interesting you bring up if Kirk Ferentz doesn't have a say in this, or is this Kirk Ferentz out? Are him and his son looking at each other like, man, this is really uncomfortable?
Well, I'm just basing off of Kirk.
Maybe the AD can just come in and break the tie for us and just announce you're not coming back. I don't know.
Well, but so if he's out, let's just say he retires, okay? Some of the headlines are about the 25 points per game at that point.
Yeah.
And the decision to bring back, Brian as the OC. And now that's behind you a month from now. If in fact that's the path you're going to, I'm just saying from the optics and perception, it's different, for a guy that's, Mr. Hawkeye. So I'm trying to figure out why, if he's so bad that you put an ultimatum out there that if you don't average 25, you're not returning, and you're not doing it, but you're keeping him on for a team that has a chance to play for the Big Ten title. Well, that makes no sense to me. Why he holds the playbook and the play caller?
Well, there's no one else on staff that's better, is what they're announcing.
But how do they know that? I mean, even on a bad offense,
the head coach is saying that. I guess I don't. What they're saying, Hutton, is we suck on offense. No play caller this year is going to change that. We can't change what we are on offense. We can't change everything we're doing. If we're going to get to the Big Ten championship, it's on defense and special teams alone.
And they're doing that.
So we're just going to keep playing this thing out and try to win games the way they've won games this year.
Now we're on to the second option, because I haven't thought about this till you mentioned that.
I think the option is blow up the entire offensive side of the ball.
Or
and bring in a new offensive staff.
Or this is, okay, Kirk Ferentz said we're doing this, so here's the 25 point per game rule or whatever. And it's not going well. What's he still doing calling plays? Well, Kirk Ferentz isn't going to remove him until after the end of the year. And we're not going to go down this path again. So you announce it now, and Ferentz still keeps Brian on as the OC. And it's one of the two. And there's already been some speculation about if the new rules of college football and college basketball and just the landscape, it has been able to send some really good coaches into other aspects of what they want to do moving forward. Maybe Kirk Ferentz, it could be not just this, but Kirk Ferentz had, I believe, Chad, he's one of the ones that had commented on conference expansion, and he takes the pageantry out and what it was versus what it's becoming. A lot of coaches feel that way.
Let me read a couple parts of this just clearly again, and we can take away.
Sure.
Let's dissect Beth Getz and what she's saying here in this official statement from Iowa. I informed Brian that our intention is for him to be with us through the bowl game, but this is his last season with the program. Not demotion, last season with the program. He's gone. He's not going to tight ends coach or quarterback coach or anything else. He's gone. Making this known today is in the best interest of the program and its loyal fans. It provides clarity during this pivotal time in the schedule. Okay? This is the next big part that fascinates me. It is not my practice to be involved in assistant coaching decisions, and certainly not to make public such a change during a season. And then it just goes on to say, but our priority is to our student athletes. So it's not my practice, but this is an extraordinary circumstance because we are playing offense from 1918, and I have to intervene and tell the head coach that his son is gone at the end of the year, and let's stop speculating. Let me stop getting emails from boosters and fans about it, and let people stop doing the math and just say, this is it. Whatever happens the rest of the way, great, but we're moving forward at the end of the year. I'm thinking that's what it is, but you may be onto something with Kirk Ferentz maybe out too.
What got me going on the path of what does Kirk Ferentz want to do? Brian, his son, is going to be the OC through the bowl game.
Yeah.
That's why I'm saying, is something going to be announced by Kirk Ferentz prior to the bowl game, and that's the game. That's the final game. I don't know.
You're saying Brian Ferentz, interim head coach?
No. I'm not saying Kirk Ferentz is going to resign or get fired. I'm saying he would retire.
Yeah.
And that would be the retirement bowl game, the final game at Iowa.
That's just
me spitballing like I'm having a beer with you.
Yeah, no, I like the speculation. I will say I don't buy it because I think if you are, this is just me talking now. If I'm Kirk Ferentz and I've been somewhere since 1999, I think is when he took over as head coach at Iowa. I've been somewhere that long. I'm an institution in a program. I'm probably having a farewell season. I'm not just going to announce at the end while my son is being announced by the AD that he's out at the – I just do it all at once and say, hey, guys, it's my last year. My contract's up, or I'm going to have a farewell season here, and do it that way. This would seem like a weird way to go out if you're Kirk Ferentz.
It's a weird announcement,
which makes me think he's coming back.
It's a weird announcement, though, because you keep it quiet. Even if you've informed the OC he's not returning, you don't announce that.
Well, also –
If it's behind the scenes, keep it behind the scenes. This is an official statement. Just strange.
It's the fact that she made the statement.
Right.
It's the head football coach in charge of the staff, not the AD. She even says it's not my practice to get involved with staff decisions like this. But I'm making the call right now and telling everyone he's done at the end of the year.
Well, who put in the 25-point clause?
I can't. Here's where I'm at. I don't know if Kirk Ferentz appreciates that from her. Because now it lets him off the hook with his son, that he doesn't have to fire him and make this call, or if he hates it, because now here's my AD coming in and saying, your son sucks. He's done. I'm making the call right now. And called both of them in the office to tell them that. I honestly don't know.
I know.
I don't know where they stand on this because he's not even going to get a chance to.
And by the way,
said that they'd have to average 34 a game to reach that 25-point mark on the season the rest of the way, which will not happen.
And Beth, this is also the interim athletic director making this statement. Keep that in mind. Not just the AD. I think this is just a formality because there's more to this story, and the son wants to be around the father.
I don't know.
Because the 25-point thing is overshadowing what season they're having.
I think they just know that he's out, and I think that it's an awkward situation, and they decided to go ahead and tell the world and Iowa people that, hey, don't worry about it. We're moving in a different direction at the end of the year. And he's such an Iowa guy through and through.
Yes.
That he's okay with that being announced and moving forward. Maybe that's the case. Over, under, Iowa, Northwestern is what I was looking for.
Okay.
I heard that
It was what was the spread earlier 2 weeks ago? It was 31.5, 32.5, and it went well under.
This one's 30.5 opening.
I'd take the under.
I don't think – I need to look this up. Dave, we can probably find this. I don't think there's ever been, since we've kept record of over-under.
That's the lowest because
a point spread in the 20s. I mean, an over-under in the 20s.
No, there hasn't been because the previous record for lowest over-under combined was the one that they just had 2 weeks ago.
Yeah,
or opening over-under, I'm saying.
They had that one, and then I think 2 years ago, they also
31.5 or something.
Iowa-Kentucky bowl game, Music City Bowl, was the other lowest it had ever been, and then they've topped that twice this year.
That's when I think Kentucky started a linebacker at quarterback, one of the Wade twins. Played quarterback in that game because Will Levis set out.
21-0, the final score. It hit the under.
Well, that game, the 31.5 hit the under.
Yeah,
by like
under
6 or 7 points, right?
Yes.
Let's do it. Come on, let's bet that thing down. If enough people hit the under, Hutton, we can set a record here. We can make history, and that'll push that line down into the 20s for the first time ever.
Chad, NFL trade deadline coming up tomorrow, 24 hours from now. Buying and selling. There's going to be a lot of debate now which teams are in the market versus sticking where they are with the roster they have, or they're selling the roster based on injuries. I don't know if there's enough buyers to make it a market worth selling. Because if you had asked me last week, is Derrick Henry available? Yes. If you're going to get the right return. And I don't see a lot of teams that would be considered buyers right now with a ton of draft picks willing to make a move necessary. Dallas right now has 4 draft picks based on what I was reading. That's not enough to go make a move if you need to make a move. Point being, do you think we'll see a lot of action? Or do you think we see some teams that have been discussing things, but the offers weren't there? I think there's been a lot of chatter. I do. Teams want to make trades. I just don't know if there's enough capital to make the trades even from both teams' side perspective.
I think it's going to be a big old dud. I really do. I think that's where we're headed. I think the Titans winning yesterday kind of threw a wrench in everything, because now they're 3-4, and you're looking at a quarterback who had the best quarterback rating I've seen from a Titans quarterback in years in his first game, and you're thinking, well, maybe this guy's the real deal. Let's at least ride it out for a while and see what we have here. I think that hurts it. I just don't. And like you said, there's just not the right trade partners on either side, either with a mix of draft picks to offer, current players, and the ones that are available. Ryan Tannehill's a good example. How long is he out with the ankle?
Exactly.
Is he ever going to be 100% this year? I mean, if I'm the Vikings and I'm looking at it going, he's going to be 100% in a week, I make that move of guys available, because you got a chance at the playoffs in that division, and if you can get Ryan Tannehill up to speed, I think he's going to help you get there, but no one really knows his health moving forward with the ankle injury. So I think it's going to be a big dud tomorrow at the trade deadline.
Yeah, let's dive into the Vikings' decision with what they do moving forward. We'll do that later in the show, because now at 4-4 and losing Cousins, do they try to make a move, or do they already know Cousins wasn't coming back after this year, it was an expiring contract? Do they go after a rookie and try to do it that way on a more affordable contract versus the big money they're going to be paying to Justin Jefferson, Hawkinson, and defenders that they still need to add? Coming up, well, we've got alphas and betas, and we discuss what a Steelers wide receiver had to say.
Dabo Swinney ripping his own fans. Dabo Swinney at Clemson is, I don't know, they tell me that he's the guy that doesn't like the transfer portal because he's made some comments that weren't exactly supportive of it. Dabo Swinney has done a job at Clemson that very few thought could be done. Clemson is a town about this big. Well, I better do this, not that, because that's like a white power sign idiots say. But it's about that big. The state is South Carolina. The state is not Clemson. So, but Dabo Swinney put Clemson in rarefied air. If you, a couple years ago, were going to name me the 3 best college football teams before Georgia's run here, you'd say Alabama, Ohio State, and Clemson. That's kind of who it always came down to. It felt like. So Dabo Swinney is now the victim of something that is good in one way, but it's bad in another. Incredible expectations of your fan base, meaning 10-2 ain't good enough. It just ain't. You can say whatever you want, but it just ain't. We got to be better. What? We're not in the college football playoff? What? We're not winning a national champion? What? We're 4-2? That's only winning 67% of our games? Here's what Dabo had to say. If you don't go undefeated, people say you're losers, that you're terrible. Let me tell you something. This is why football coaches for years and years and years and years fought the college football playoff. We're at a point in time, and I hate that, where people, if you don't go undefeated, you're losers. You're terrible. It's just a terrible mindset. Honestly, maybe we need to lose a few games and lighten up the bandwagon. Sometimes the bandwagon get a little full. That's the one good thing about going through a little bit of so-called adversity, is that you really find out who's with you and who's not. That's all crap. Let me explain to you Dabo Swinney's day, can I? Dabo Swinney probably wakes up around 5:30. Dabo Swinney smokes shit, shower, shave, shampoo, goes to the office. Probably has a meeting at 7. Dabo Swinney then is probably in different meetings with players or recruits, or maybe the administration, going and maybe watching film, whatever. Then he has practice. Then after practice, he's doing the same thing. Then in the evening, he's making phone calls. Probably goes home around 10. At no point in time in his day, his week, his month, his year, is he finding out who's with us and who's not with us. It's not like there's a list. Now, maybe you find out when media member wants to rip you, but on a daily basis, a monthly basis, you're not finding out any of this crap. It's very simple. Coaches, if you want to know who's with you, Understand that when you lose, nobody's really with you. If you want to know who's really with you, win. And then everybody's really with you. It's literally that simple. As my father used to say to me, Dan, we're with you, win or tie, and we ain't so sure about the tie. So shut up with that stuff, win some football games, and don't sweat it. Seriously, do yourself a favor. Work hard, grab yourself a glass of wine, go sit in your chair, and read a book instead of being on social media or worrying about who is with you and who is not with you.
Sixth, the P-Biter location with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow rolls on across the OutKick network. We've got college football overreaction to what was another fun and upset-filled weekend.
It's plenty to overreact to this weekend. It's a good overreaction college football Saturday we had.
No doubt, man. No doubt. And plenty to, at least we think we have some clarity off of what was Week 8 in the NFL. Deontay Johnson says there's clarity with him that the refs were in it for Jacksonville. He's willing to go further than any coach has ever gone at a podium. Most coaches, Chad, they just stand at a podium when asked about officials or certain calls, they just be like, hey, not allowed to comment on that. You have to ask the NFL for clarity. No, just go to Deontay Johnson.
He was ready for an answer.
Oh, man. It was just, apologizing on Monday is just not good enough for anybody. But Johnson said, I didn't like the refs today. They must have gotten paid good today. The referees cost us the game. They wanted them to win, talking about Jacksonville. And the reaction, but you could see guys in the background of the interview at the locker. They're just like, wow, like raising eyebrows, shaking heads, kind of smirking, maybe half laughing, half like, man, does this guy know the fine that's about to come his way or what he's alleging? Johnson is just saying straight up that the refs should be fined by the league, or it's obvious to him that they wanted one team to win and one team not to win. One team did. Jacksonville wins against Pittsburgh, who now turn around and play on a short week against Tennessee on Thursday night at Heinz Field.
I would always prefer to hear the honest response on officiating as opposed to someone just flat out lying about it. We've seen others take the complete silence approach. Josh Heupel at Tennessee, 2 weeks in a row, has just decided to go silent for 20, 30 seconds when someone asks about officiating to try to make his point without getting fined. I just prefer just go ahead and say it like Deontay Johnson did. It was terrible.
Yeah, I mean, Tomlin's just ripping into refs during the game. There was an offside penalty that wiped off on a field goal attempt that wiped off a field goal for Pittsburgh. It was a 55-yarder at the end of the half. Bad. And the lineman who was apparently offsides, I say apparently, when you see it, it's awful. The quote from Isaac Siamalo, obviously the referee saw something different. I'm sure in a couple of days we'll get a nice little apology. That will warm my heart.
That is the one. Would you rather get the apology or rather get silence? I would at least rather someone acknowledge that I'm not crazy on a call, right? I'd prefer that. It doesn't change the outcome of the game, doesn't change the opportunity lost in that moment, but I'd still rather get some sort of response other than complete silence, right? There's nothing you can do about it in hindsight, but just the acknowledgement that I'm not insane when I say this was an awful call. I'd rather get something back.
Chad, let's we're not going silent on alphas and betas of the weekend.
No.
And Kansas not silent with what was a fantastic game, first and foremost. And the upset win against Oklahoma at home, knocking off the previously unbeaten Sooners. We start with Lance Leipold.
Lance Leipold inherited a program at Kansas that from 2010 to 2021 never won more than 3 games in a season. I mean, we have the dregs of Power 5 programs, and then you have Kansas, who was at a different level than everyone else. They were far and away the worst. If there was ever relegation away from Power 5 football, from 2010 to 2021, Kansas would have been relegated to the OVC. And instead, Lance Leipold comes in, and there's something about that win that doesn't even feel that crazy with what he's been able to accomplish at Kansas. And it's with a backup quarterback. Jalen Daniels out right now. And then Jason Beam comes in, has a few huge plays in that game. Lance Leipold can coach football. He is a brilliant, and his staff, brilliant offensive play callers. Super impressed with Kansas. And Hutton, one of the things you love to see about college football, that game ends, the goalposts come down, and just the joyous fury of a bunch of college kids running the goalpost to that lake on campus. I'd say lake.
30-man march or whatever they're calling it.
It's a pond. Yeah, where they just march it straight into the water. Terrific. Love that scene.
Great.
At Kansas.
Great comments and statement by Leipold, too. You know what? It's probably time for me to start talking about how proud I am of how far this program's come. It really has in a short amount of time. That's to do with the players, especially the ones that stuck around, that believe in the direction, to our staff, support staff, administration, all those things that allow you to try to make progress like we have. At this moment, so proud of them and happy for them. We ask a lot. It's not easy, but under the stage and everything today, and the weather included, it's a big win, and it is. I mean, they've now knocked off a top 10 opponent for the first time since '84. Back-to-back seasons of bowl eligibility, but so what, 6-2? Props,
6-2.
Man. And his name's going to continue to get circulated, and here he is building something to Kansas. And in this, with the rules set up the way they are, any program can gain momentum now.
Yeah.
And what was the 2010 to 2021?
2010 to 2021, they never won more than 3 games in a single season.
It was Front Office Sports or someone from last year that I was stunned by. During that kind of same time frame, maybe off by a year or two, Kansas football was more profitable than Kansas basketball.
Yeah.
That's
Football's
nuts.
still the moneymaker.
Nuts.
There was a photo that Fox was showing that we can't show you on this show.
Right.
But post-game of 1984, when Kansas knocked off Oklahoma, the last time, Hutton, they beat a top 10 opponent. And some of the hairstyles in this photo, it's just random fans on the field on I'm talking old school AstroTurf field that it gave me strawberries on my elbows and knees just looking at this field. It looked like it was put down on a slab of concrete. And in the end zone, which Kansas still doesn't have a lot going on in one of those end zones, no stands or much of anything. I mean, there was nothing. There was no field house. There were just trees in one end zone with one little mini 1984 Jumbotron that just said Hawks win on the back of it. And it's like 30 fans celebrating as Kansas fans and Kansas players are celebrating beating Oklahoma in 1984. Hang the photo in the Louvre. I'm looking at it thinking, it looks like a high school field of today. Like the shot of it with just that one little sign, it looked like the local bank sponsored the sign with the old school graphics on it that said Hawks win. It's an amazing photo.
Amazing season so far for A.J. Brown. Best receiver in the league, man, with what he's doing, Chad. He's setting records for not just the Eagles, but what we're seeing across the entire National Football League. He's on Calvin Johnson's pace for his all-time record for most yardage in a season. So is Tyreek Hill, by the way. But week in and week out, even when it's been slow out of the gate to start this year for Philadelphia, A.J. Brown has been the alpha on the field, and that's after he's been paid. There was speculation that he wasn't going to be the same guy. He's been better. He's not the same guy. He's been better. 6th straight game with 125 yards. That breaks the previous longevity record there of Calvin Johnson in 2012.
Sort of the anti-Deshaun Watson in terms of getting the bag and then continuing to play and play very well and even being better than before. A.J. Brown, just that catch. And it's one that it sent social media ablaze. I'm not watching the game live, but immediately go and look up that catch in the end zone, one-handed, and the angle he was at when he caught it. Terrific. A.J. Brown is a bad man. He is one of those guys that he is a wide receiver, but we saw it here in Nashville, plays the game like a middle linebacker with his physicality and the way he attacks the football. Love watching him play. What an addition for the Eagles. And suddenly now with the 49ers, 3 straight losses, I'm looking at the Eagles and thinking, who's going to catch them in the NFC right now? To me, clearly the favorite, the way they're playing, and if they can continue to improve offensively, look out.
Chad, Will Levis, alpha yesterday in his NFL debut, setting NFL records, and doing so for a franchise that is desperate for the future of the franchise. And he's been the third string. He overtook Malik Willis' spot, not just as backup, but now he's taking Tannehill's spot as the starter. Short week now on Thursday Night Football in Pittsburgh, where, I mean, again, the NFL comes at you fast. But yesterday, alpha. And we saw 2021 version Will Levis in this game when he was playing underneath Liam Cohen, the offensive coordinator, NFL style, coming from the Los Angeles Rams. And he was locked in for the last 2 weeks. He's been doing that, knowing that he had a chance to be the starter and take over. And he did more than take over. He was dominant. And the arm strength is apparent, man. I don't know who's happier, Titans fans or Mel Kiper.
Oh, yeah. Look, I mean, anyone, and I'm someone who did not believe in Will Levis coming into the draft. Anyone who did, I'm sure they're taking a victory lap today.
No, me either.
And for good reason. It is one game. But for one game, to me, that was the Will Levis highlight tape of everything that he did right at Kentucky. There was plenty of bad at Kentucky also that we did not see in that game, but that was all of the positive. That was cream rising to the top. That was the arm talent. That was effortless throwing motion deep down the field and dropping it in a bucket at times. Total command of the offense. Even the running attack at times looked better with Will Levis getting quickly to Derrick Henry, handing the ball off. Terrific debut for Will Levis. And in a season that's been very disappointing for Titans fans, they got something to look forward to now. And that's the development of Will Levis to see if this thing is for real. They get another opportunity in a short week against Mitch Trubisky and this Pittsburgh team, and not Kenny Pickett.
To the betas, is history repeating itself 365 days later, Chad? This is normally where we see North Carolina not just go down a hill, but fall off a cliff. And they've done that now. They're doing it again where, I mean, Georgia Tech, UNC, a game that combined for over 1,200 yards of total offense. But Carolina loses to Georgia Tech after falling the week prior. And here's Carolina among the unbeatens and now among the afterthoughts of the ACC.
Hutton, they went from college football playoff dark horse 2 weeks ago and then a home loss to a Virginia team that had one win all season. I think that was against an FCS opponent, by the way. And they lose to them at home. Then they go on the road and lose to a pretty bad Georgia Tech team. Not the 1990 national champion Georgia Tech Rambling Wreck. This team is not. They go from dark horse college football playoff team to is the Meineke Car Care Bowl still around? Something like that.
Is South Carolina available to play in a bowl?
Yeah, are they going to go get doused in Mayo again? Someone, the winner of that game? South Carolina's got 4 more wins to go before they get bowl eligible. But they suddenly go from a team that could really disrupt the college football landscape to a middling bowl game played the week of Christmas somewhere. Crazy.
And a Heisman,
how quickly they've fallen. But I guess it's not that crazy
too,
considering that it's the same thing that happened to them a year ago.
Yeah. Chad, also, we're seeing this a lot now. College coaches blaming players instead of just saying, hey, it's on me. And then heaping praise when it's necessary and taking the blame. We're seeing more and more of the example of the opposite, which is odd given the position of that job and the focus that you have to keep that locker room on.
I think it's such a fine line now of being disciplined within your program and knowing that you're the boss as the head coach and making sure your players know that and telling them what they need to hear. And sometimes what players need to hear is not what they want to hear. But there's a fine line between being able to do that on the practice field, during a game on the sideline, in the locker room, and not taking it public, especially in an NIL era where they're going to go get opportunities elsewhere, and it's never been easier to transfer and play somewhere right away. Pat Narduzzi is the prime example of this. And I know that the beat reporter that put this tweet out the quote out didn't really help him that much by not putting the rest of it. But the bottom line is Pat Narduzzi did say, we had a good team last year. I thought we were going to replace those good players. We really didn't. Apparently we didn't. And then you had his own players reposting that on X and saying things to him that forced Pat Narduzzi to come back and have to clarify, saying it's completely on me, 100% on me. Coach has got to do a better job, yada, yada, yada. Not a good look. Deion Sanders saying, got to replace the offensive line. While true, not a great look. Mike Loxley, we're great at calling plays. Receivers got to catch the football and not fall down. Not a great look. Be careful. These are all honest reactions, and we like honesty, but you got to be careful in this era of NIL when you're talking bad about players to the media.
Yeah, you got to do more. You got to be careful about what you're locking up at the Rose Bowl, too. Where beta of the weekend, whoever is stealing jewelry and other things from the players' locker room for Colorado in their game against UCLA. This happened, Deion's debut as a coach at Jackson State. He had his things
robbed.
stolen that they recovered post-game. In this case, you've got police looking into whoever was at the stadium and went into the locker room and stole a lot of stuff from the players. And what's been a rising
what I think
crime
immediately,
rate in
Hutton?
Pasadena.
Inside job.
Really?
There's no way that a security guard is not standing just right there, one of them, at the entrance to the visitors' locker room. I think it was an inside job. Shame on you, UCLA.
College football overreaction. Straight ahead.
I'm here at the Big Machine Music City Grand Prix, but that's not the only big race that's on people's minds. Let's go talk about it.
There's no way Biden can win again. There's just no way. Even the people that voted for him because they didn't like Trump now at least have to see like senile, not all there. Probably won't be alive for 4 more years.
Are you a Trump guy? Or are you a DeSantis guy? Or someone else?
I don't like any of them.
Who's your dream candidate? Who would you want to run?
Myself. I think the best candidates probably are smart enough not to run.
I just hope there's somebody that's young enough to care about the country instead of their politics.
My fear is they get Gavin Newsom from California. And I think it would be the new cool vote for the younger people, and that's what I don't like.
Who do you think on the Republican side would be able to take on Gavin Newsom?
Great question. As a Republican registered, I love what Trump's body of work did, but they're just out to get him and destroy him, and we won't get things done, which is crappy for me to say. I thought DeSantis was going to be the guy. Trump only has 4 years left. He cannot fix everything that just happened in 4 years. And he's going to be battling indictments and all these false stuff for the next 4 years. We won't get anything done. And it'll just be the stalemate in America. That's why I almost don't want him in. But if he is the leading candidate, that's who I'm going to vote for.
Is there any Democrat that you would vote for, consider voting for?
Absolutely not.
What about RFK Jr.?
No.
Who should our first female president be?
Michelle Obama, of course. Okay. Yeah.
I'm going to go with Harambe 2024.
We have the 2024 presidential race coming up, and I wanted to see who you thought your favorite TV characters would vote for. Homer Simpson, who do you think he would vote for?
Donald Trump, all the way.
Vito Corleone.
Whoa. Whoever advances the cause of the Corleone family. Yeah.
Tony Soprano. If Tony Soprano is voting in the 2024 election, who do you think he's voting for?
I'm going to go Ron DeSantis.
Okay, why do you think that?
Just seems like a Ron DeSantis kind of guy.
Is this a meatball joke that you're trying to make right now? What about Homer Simpson?
Homer would vote for Biden because he's a dope.
Who do you think Napoleon Dynamite would vote for?
That's a good question. I actually don't know.
There's a right answer here.
He's voting for himself or Pedro.
There's a Viking show, I think.
Okay.
Maybe that's Hulu. I don't know.
So in the Viking show, whatever the main character is, who do you think they would vote for in 2024?
Probably a goat or a dog.
I think we have one of those in office right now. So who do you think Jon Snow would vote for in this upcoming election?
I'm going to say Donald J. Trump.
Why do you think so?
Because Game of Thrones is all about drama, and Trump comes with the drama, baby.
Would you vote for Trump from jail?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, probably. Because at that point, what else do you have to lose?
Okay, would you vote for Trump from a jail cell?
Yeah, baby, I will get Trump out of jail.
Would you vote for Trump in jail?
Oh, yeah.
Based as
The thing that Trump needs to remember is there's another political figure that said, I don't recall very well. Yeah. And that's all he's got to say.
Is there like a dream candidate, someone that you think could like save us all?
Yeah, Jesus.
Amen to that.
Coming up, college football overreaction. Davey Hudson brings us some scenarios or comments, and we jump in with a little concerning vibe, or maybe we're not willing to fold just yet on some of these.
In an effort to give you my God's honest knee-jerk reaction to these, haven't even glanced at them today. Haven't even looked at it. Did I do it for that reason, or is it just because I didn't want to read them? That's the question for you and the audience to decide. Could be either way.
Chad, the police in Nottingham are investigating the death of the former NHL player Adam Johnson, who died. His throat was cut by an opponent's skate. And initially, it was just ruled by the team a freak accident. And now they're investigating to see if, with the Elite Ice Hockey League, and they've been on the scene investigating if this was intentional. And just reading some of the comments underneath some of the stories yesterday, there are those who are claiming they've seen the video of it, and I certainly wouldn't want to. But in reading comments, they're like, it looks like something you would want to investigate.
Yeah, I'm not going to watch it.
And, man, horrific is all I'm thinking of what that. And I'm also thinking, and we talked with Dr. Chow about this too, about it. It wouldn't necessarily happen with a player laying on the ice as much as it would be another player upended. But if I don't know how more hockey players aren't wearing the protection around the artery, right?
Yeah.
And he mentioned like goaltenders wearing that on and for the puck. But a lot of times goaltenders are trying to reduce the amount of protection they have to be faster, more mobile in the crease, not padded up to the point where they can't move. And I think a lot of times players feel that way. This is where I think more players would be open to the idea of wearing the protection around the throat. I would be.
I mean, look, I'm not going to look at the video. I know it's out there, but all it would take is one glance at that video, and I feel like anyone playing hockey would be crazy not to want to do this, to put the turtleneck on that Dr. Chow talked about. Yeah. That would be protection against this, just on the off chance that something like this happens. But, I mean, look, I get, it's a different level of speed and everything else, but, I mean, kids play hockey all over the world, right? And this is such a rare thing to happen. It's not like you see this injury a lot and this happening, which is kind of crazy to me when you think about not somebody, trying to kill someone by putting their skate in the air and karate kicking them with a skate in the carotid artery. I'm not talking about that happening. I'm talking about guys on the ice and someone just skating away even and accidentally glancing someone that's on the ice, right? Or anything like that happening. You don't see it very often at all, which is good. But, I mean, one time is enough, and this is just a crazy story.
Yeah, the police investigating to see if the other player could face manslaughter charges. But more on that for sure, coming from Nottingham with the Nottingham Panthers and Sheffield Steelers on Saturday. College football overreaction. Is it just a realistic concern that Davey's bringing to us, or is this truly clickbait? Chad and I try to decide right now.
Guys, we're going to start with what is the biggest story in all of college football. My first statement, Jim Harbaugh will not make it through the season as Michigan's head coach.
He's going to make it through the season. He's not going to be back. I feel pretty comfortable in saying that now. And that may sound crazy to some Michigan fans out there, some in the chat right now, saying, oh, what's the big deal? He sent some low-level staffer to games to watch opponents. Nothing to see here. I don't think it's trending in that direction. I think it's trending in a very bad direction. Even Bobby Carpenter from a week ago to now changed his tune a lot on what he's hearing from other Big Ten coaches. Big Ten coaches don't even want to play Michigan based on what they've heard and what they know about what Jim Harbaugh was up to the rest of the way. So, look, I don't think they're going to fire him in season. So that part's an overreaction. But, Davey, I don't think he's going to be back in 2024.
Chad, I'm with you. I think it's an overreaction to say he's fired in season. We should also mention they're going to be in the mix for a title.
Yeah. Well, and we should also mention the Wall Street Journal report that they rescinded the contract extension from him.
And in that report, keep in mind with this how the original news came out that he was staying at Michigan and not taking, correct me if I'm wrong, this has happened a couple of times, the Denver job. It wasn't through the athletic director. It was through Santaono, Michigan's president, who tweeted that Harbaugh was returning and he was going to be the head coach. And, Chad, the athletic department was aware through that statement from Santaono on social media.
Right.
This is, if the report's accurate that the offer's been rescinded, this would be all the way up to the president level because that's Harbaugh's his guy, right? There's more to it. I think Davey's on to something that's not yet like cause for concern, like it's legitimate, but I think it could be. And it's only going to happen when the two sides decide to part ways. And then the NFL will report too about no safe harbor here, serve out the suspension, or there's an additional thing slapped on because you don't meet the requirements of eligibility. That's coming from that report from Pelissero and Rappaport.
Since we have enough time, I'll just bring it up. And kind of as a follow-up, I asked this question because we know that the NCAA has been on campus, and they are by no means an organization that is used to moving swiftly. But I'm just thinking with all the pressure that is now on them, Chad, the coaches and organizations you mentioned, it's just like we don't even want to play them. Could you see them going ahead and actually being quick in their assessment for once, and they step in and say something like, we're not going to let you coach out the rest of this year?
But there's the appeals process with that too.
Yeah, and I think that all you could do, if you're Michigan, all you do is appeal and then just keep coaching and keep playing out the season and let them come back and do something later. Hutton, you were onto something when you hinted at this. To your question, Davey, I think it's the Big Ten. If Bobby's right and all these rumors are correct about how irate every coach in the Big Ten is, 13 of the 14 schools have been scouted illegally. There's one that hasn't been that's not on their schedule, but 13 of the 14. If they're that angry that they're going to the league office saying, I don't even want to play these dudes the rest of the way, it would be the Big Ten that comes in and says, you're not eligible for a Big Ten title and you can't play in the Big Ten championship game. And then that could derail their college football playoff hopes, if that were the case.
It just comes down to this. What else is out there, or what else gets out there that we don't know that those behind the scenes know?
Yeah.
Why did Michigan self-impose the 3-game suspension to begin the season if this were going on and the FBI had been on campus for months, according to the report we got last week, about something else in regards to the former OC? Just, again, there's a lot that's been going on within the athletic department and the football program, and they immediately sent and had Connor Stallions on paid leave and pending the investigation. What else are they going to find, or have they found? I think there are more layers to it.
Good stuff, guys. Moving on, shifting from a school that's in the college football playoff discussion to one that we've typically see in that discussion, but they've not been this year. Clemson will not finish the season with a winning record.
That is the proper reaction, not an overreaction at all. Clemson's remaining schedule. Notre Dame at Clemson this week. I think they're going to lose that one. They play Georgia Tech at home. Likely a win, I would say, for Clemson in that game.
Georgia Tech doesn't lose on even weeks.
Well, that's an interesting one. North Carolina at home against Clemson, so maybe they lose to Georgia Tech too. Toss-up game, I'd say. Then at South Carolina, I think another toss-up game. So even if they go 2-2 down the stretch, which is not going to be easy, I think they lose the bowl game. That would get them 6-6. Then I think they're going to go to a bowl and lose with a disinterested team that's accustomed to either playing in a New Year's Six game or for a national championship. And going to whatever low-level bowl game they go with 6 wins, not going to be interesting to them. Guys are going to opt out, and they're going to end with a losing record. Or they just lose 3 of their last 4, and they end with a losing record that way. One way or the other, Hutton, they're not going to have a winning record at the end of the year. I think this is a losing record for Clemson this year, which is crazy to think about with all the success of Dabo.
Yeah, and I mean, it's been 12 straight years of double-digit wins since the last time they went, 4 losses in the ACC. They finished 6-7 that year.
And it's not getting better the rest of the way.
No, the crossroads. Not an overreaction, Davey. And it's comments made by Dabo on the coach's show, how he's responding to fans, more or less saying, you've had it so good, it can get worse. It is. And I think and a lot of people are realizing they don't have the horses that they used to get it back on the path of positivity. There's going to be some more negativity and a very poor outlook at the end of the year.
Dabo not embracing the transfer portal is what's leading to the death of the Clemson dynasty, and it might eventually cost him his job. But next up, guys, Texas will win the Big 12 championship.
Yes. I've got them. I'm backing them because I thought it was going to be a rematch against Oklahoma. Chad, even if the injuries at quarterback play a
Murphy
huge factor.
looked pretty good too.
Exactly.
Against BYU.
Exactly. And there, you had hesitation that we were going to see Arch Manning next year because of Malik Murphy.
Yeah.
I say yes, Texas is winning the Big 12 championship.
Yeah, I'm going to say yes, too. Based on who's at the top right now, Bedlam this weekend, Oklahoma State and Oklahoma. Oklahoma State's been red hot.
Mm-hmm.
They've got 1 loss in conference. But just looking at everyone else around that 1-loss mark, Kansas State, Iowa State's been a big surprise after starting slow this year. Texas is far and away the most talented of those teams. So tie goes to talent. Give me the Longhorns. They're winning the Big 12.
Okay, guys, sticking with the Big 12 and a team that will remain in the Big 12, Lance Leipold looks to bolt from Kansas after this season.
I think yes, and I think it's in a scenario that I discussed earlier with Michigan. I don't know that he for sure leaves for Michigan State. It's been reported that Michigan State's got him tops on their list also. Maybe he does just to get into the Big Ten. I'd like to see what he could accomplish long-term at Kansas and see if he can sustain what they've done already. But, guys, I think he's gone after this season.
I do too, but I think
same exact age as Jim Harbaugh.
Not an overreaction. Why would you leave for Michigan State?
Just because of the conference. The Big Ten is still richer than the Big 12. There's a little bit more stability.
No, I agree
there.
with that. I mean, there's a lot that can happen domino-wise.
But I'm with you. I don't want to step into that Michigan State situation right now with what he's already done at Kansas.
What we know.
Michigan's a different story.
Yes. What about Iowa?
Let
me just tie in Kirk Ferentz.
Iowa's that would be a different offense, that's for sure.
Let me just tie in Kirk Ferentz and what, again, Brian Ferentz has been announced that he's not returning as the offensive coordinator next year, but he's going to coach through the bowl game, which is just bizarre. If the offense is this bad, and it is this bad, everyone knows, and they knew it last offseason when they gave him the 25-point average. Why is he coaching through the rest of the year? Anyone can average what they're doing.
Yeah.
Anyone can set the lowest over-under in Vegas history opening line, not just Iowa. And how much, if I'm a coach, Chad, and I'm in the position at Kansas that he's in, how much do you have to look at what has happened to Matt Campbell at Iowa State and think about the opportunities elsewhere versus staying and what has surrounded college football in that time frame of where we're headed versus where they were when Campbell had the chance to jump? like Michigan State makes sense for Matt Campbell, for instance, based on opportunities he's turned down to stay. I don't hear his name nearly as much as we used to.
No, but they're tied for first in the Big 12 right now, shockingly enough, at Iowa State. No, I think there is a lot of wisdom in striking while you can. If you're considering a move and think you're going to eventually do it, it's probably a good idea to do it at a lower level Power 5 job. But I still think it's got to be the right job. I don't just think you go to any other, if it's Big Ten or SEC, I don't think it's any Big Ten or SEC job. To me, Michigan is the one.
Texas A&M?
Yeah, you go to Texas A&M.
He's making $5 million right now.
I think Texas A&M would go to Mike Elko before him.
But I'm saying level-wise.
Yeah, absolutely.
Coming up, college football playoff selection. We'll get the first rankings tomorrow to find out where the committee's going. Find out where Chad and I have the top teams in America. Next.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the number 1 overall pick.
Is it fair for people to be upset with Barbie?
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna lib. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose. I mean, what have you seen firsthand of how this has affected you in the plant and your fellow employees? Under Joe Biden, the Taliban has retaken Afghanistan. Putin has invaded Ukraine. So if there was ever a time for freaking aliens to inhabit and conquer Earth, now would be that time.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
I made the call to end the Me Too movement. And today I'm going to continue making that case. And that's just a way to further taunt these women, to make them feel less than, to make them realize that this has just become a big joke. Deion Sanders is the Donald Trump of football.
We were directly impacted by the whole Leah Thomas thing, and we were able to see you guys on the ground with your signs supporting. That was huge.
They were saying, oh, it's only 1 or 2. That's rubbish, and we all know that's rubbish. Once those trans-identifying males were able to succeed, it just encouraged others.
Just like that, the final hour is here for the Monday edition of Hot Mic with Hunter Withrow across the OutKick Network. Chad, how would you describe the first show of the week following the craziness of the football weekend?
Dynamic. That's the way to describe this show today.
And in
Chat's
the chat.
been dynamic today, too. People
Join us
getting
there
after it.
on OutKick with the
Love
OutKick channel on
seeing it,
YouTube.
Hutton. We love seeing it.
Absolutely. If you're listening on this great radio partner, we say thank you as well. We'll give our college football playoff picks in just a moment. The news from the weekend, even on NFL game day yesterday, prior to kickoff at 1 Eastern, news circulating that the NFL isn't necessarily going to be a safe harbor. Not that easy, that Jim Harbaugh just wants to return to the NFL and be a head coach again next year for a franchise in need of a solid coach that can get you to a playoff and a Super Bowl matchup. No. Sources telling Rappaport and Pelissero from NFL media that they could treat this a lot like Jim Tressel, where you're sitting out a certain amount of time while you more or less have to serve some type of suspension for what happened in the college ranks. You're not just going to make the jump and leave everything in your wake and the dust settles without you there. No. With that being the case, Chad, it wouldn't be just one NFL owner saying, well, I can't hire you. It would be Goodell saying Harbaugh doesn't meet the eligibility requirements necessary to be employed by the league currently. It's going to take more that comes out with this story for that to take place.
I asked this question honestly.
It takes more than what we know right now, and there may be more.
And you may know this answer this question, Hutton, you may not, with the NFL circles you run in. But just in general, do people like Jim Harbaugh? Or is there something about...
Delaney Walker likes him. He loved playing for him in San Francisco.
Okay, do NFL owners like him? Is there an NFL owner that's got a connection to him that loves him? I don't know, honestly.
Rob Walton wanted him.
Yeah, he's very divisive just with his personality in the college ranks with people, and he rubs some people the wrong way in media settings and all of that. And, there's certain guys you can just say, okay, they're well-liked, they're easy to hate, they're kind of down the middle. I don't know with Jim Harbaugh. There are times where I find him to be somewhat likable, but a lot of times I think that he's a guy that just not a lot of people get along with him, that he can be a little bit odd. And I wonder how that plays with NFL teams and NFL owners, because what this story is talking about is essentially a blackballing of Jim Harbaugh from the pro ranks because of this scandal. Unless there is some rule put in place where the NFL says you can't work in the NFL while under some sort of suspension with the NCAA, that you can't come here because you're suspended there, which I don't see that rule ever happening. We're talking about an unwritten, unspoken aloud type thing that to me screams of collusion to not hire Jim Harbaugh for whatever reason. So then I ask the question, why? If you're not really that concerned with what he's done at Michigan, and maybe everyone is in the NFL, but if you're not that concerned with it and their rules don't apply to you, and you saw Jim Harbaugh lead the 49ers to the Super Bowl, and you saw what he did in the NFL before, and you've talked to his former players in the NFL, and you think he's a really good coach, why the heck would you not hire him if you're an NFL owner and just say, screw it? I don't care what he did in college. I'm hiring the coach for my team.
I mean,
which makes you think people don't like him.
Well, but not only that, it's perception's reality. It's about optics, right? All this. To me, Bill Belichick was fined $500,000. It was the largest fine levied. We certainly know the other penalties, Doc picks, everything for Spygate. They're videotaping with using equipment to videotape opposing teams' offensive, defensive signals. And there's more to it, but if there's more to this story, that's why he wouldn't meet eligibility requirements. And again, Goodell's not saying that publicly. This is through the report, the joint report of Pelissero and Rappaport. They mention that as to why they would point to this, and they've done it in the past with Tressel. The difference is Tressel was coming on as what, like an analyst or something, Chad?
Yeah.
This would be for a head coaching position. And that's where most of the time owners hire who they want to hire. They don't, and they normally fire who they don't want to fire if they're told to, right? John Gruden, for instance. I can't help but think it ties back into the NFL's handling of Spygate. And Chad, ultimately now, think about what that means for who they're partnering with, who they're in bed with. All of the apps, all of the sports wagering companies. You've pointed to this and how what Michigan was doing with the in-person, off-campus, off-site scouting.
It's a great point.
Means for over-under, means for score separation, whatever. Is Michigan going to beat the average team in the Conference USA that they slate over the 3-game self-imposed suspension? Yes, they're going to beat Akron or whoever they're playing. But what's the spread? And if Spygate's happening in the NFL, what would the attention to detail be with all of the apps and all of the money, the billions that are coming in from the sports wagering aspect of this, that are slipping names? They don't, for whatever reason, it's a miracle that no superstars in the NFL wager on anything, on team property or on the sport itself. It's just, an offensive lineman that happens to be a second-year starter, or it's a special teams player, or a third or fourth wide receiver. Or, we're trying to send an example and set a rule. Calvin Ridley gets slapped, but Calvin Ridley's not at the level of where we put the top-tier wide receiver right now. It's not the top-tier players. It's just we're sending a message that we're doing everything on the up and up. By doing this, you're not sending that message. This is on that same line to me as what they're doing with the 6-game suspension, year suspension, whatever, because by and large, we think it's acceptable what they're doing with their gambling policy. This would be something that everyone could latch onto and say it directly affects that aspect of the sport.
Here's where this whole story is unacceptable. For those that want to pardon it and say, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying type deal. And I said this the day the story broke. It screams to the integrity of the sport. And it's not just wins and losses. It's not just, I worked harder than you and I did everything possible to get your signs, and now I beat you in this game. It is also a point spread attached to those games. There's an over-under attached to those games. And now that gambling is legal and the NCAA and conferences and the NFL and everyone else has partnered with sports books.
That's the key word, partnership.
This is a problem, but it's also, we're talking about federal issues here. You can't mess with the integrity of a game if you affected point spreads and outcomes by doing something illegal that's outside the rules. And that to me is where this thing could get really slippery. When I saw federal involvement, and this was going back to the Matt Weiss deal at Michigan with the computers, that the feds are involved, and I think, oh man, if there's something on anything they found about this, do state gaming commissions suddenly come in? And what is the one thing that pro sports, especially the NFL, does not want? They do not want the integrity of the games questioned.
Exactly.
Ever.
Yep.
This is the Hippocratic oath of sport. Do no harm. The understanding is the game is on the up and up. Officials aren't on the take. Coaches aren't on the take. Players aren't on the take. There's nothing illegal that's been done beforehand to sway the outcome. It's athletes going head-to-head in this game. You bet on games. You get on your phones. We do the same, and we bet on games all the time. And our understanding, when we press accept bet on that app, is that this game is being played on the up and up, and no one's doing anything unlawful or illegal. If there is firm proof that that's not been happening, and it can be proven to the level at which an advantage has been gained by Michigan in this scandal, that is bad news. It's bad news for everyone involved. Now, I don't know how they can assign a point total to what this was worth and all of it, so it may not be able to be proven. But Hutton, this is the last thing the NFL wants. And that could be what they're saying here and why they're not going to get involved with Jim Harbaugh if he's available.
Chad, let me also say this. I'm a realist when it comes to if you're in a room, if you're the NFL, if you're a company, whatever, on the lower level, on the franchise level, the owners of those individual franchises are going to do what's best for their individual franchise. But what about the company, right? What about the overarching rules and regulations and who's in, who's out? By and large, it's about winning and making money. But this, I'll be blunt here. Rob Walton wanted to hire Jim Harbaugh, the owner of the Denver Broncos, flew to Ann Arbor to go hire him. He didn't fly back with him. Where would Connor Stallions be working today? For the Denver Broncos. Had Walton hired Harbaugh. Right?
Yeah.
If you're the NFL, you cannot let that happen. You can't just let him waltz in if the NCAA and this investigation proves that he knew about everything. Now, maybe he has it set up where, out of sight, out of mind, but the guy is literally standing on the sideline doing this. And there's video of, and proof that he's got tickets to all these different games. I don't know how much more evidence you need, unless there's more to the story that is not just on the surface level reporting that's going on here. And I think there probably is. But you think the director of what's on his byline or his description?
It was
Director
his
of
LinkedIn
Intelligence
profile is basically I'm going to use Marine Corps like intelligence with Michigan football to gain an advantage.
And such an advantage that you wouldn't bring him with you to your new, again, if everyone's doing it, sure. But this was just blatant team gear and everything. So whatever. There's more to it than
I don't think
is an owner going to hire him or not.
Yeah, I don't think everyone's doing this. I do think there are people watching the television, the TV feed. There are people watching the All-22 and trying to see it. There's a reason I'm watching Tennessee, Kentucky Saturday night. There's a reason that Josh Heupel has those huge black curtains that go up over the play call. They've done that forever before the Michigan stuff. And there's a reason they're doing that.
In the NFL, you can be on site and scout your future opponent. I sat next to one of the Steelers' advanced scouts yesterday, but he's not sitting there with gear recording the sideline.
Yeah. Also, there's a device in the helmet. They're not using signs. They're telling the quarterback that way, which could end this problem.
You're right.
Let's avoid this, though, because we got a lot of Michigan people in the chat today, and they're saying, well, problem solved. Just go ahead and put the device in the helmet, and then none of this happens. That's fine. Doesn't change the fact that Michigan was doing something no one else was. If it turns out to be the case that they went far above and beyond of what everyone else was doing and got caught, just because they changed this, which would be for the better, by the way, I agree with anyone saying that, and most coaches agree with that, doesn't mean that Michigan's off the hook in all of this.
Chad, coming up, we're going to get into our college football playoff selections.
Hutton, quickly.
Yeah.
Ratings came in for the World Series over the weekend.
Oh, yeah.
Least watched ever. Series opener drew 9.17 million viewers, less than the pandemic series in 2020 for Game 1. Just the Game 1 ratings are in.
And Game 2 is not going to trend well at all.
Exactly what I said would happen. This is the nightmare scenario for Major League Baseball.
So it comes down. The networks know all. Okay, they want to pull a number. That's fine. Why would you? Because the dates for the World Series are predetermined. Why would you schedule and start it on the weekend against college and NFL?
I would want
at night?
all but maybe one
in the week. And you want it in the week
during the week, not up against college football in the NFL ever.
And is it because of the heaven forbid you play in November? You don't want to go too long?
I don't know.
But you've got to add things to the front part of the play. Again,
Game 1 was Friday night.
Yeah.
Also not a great night for television.
And then back-to-back, you had Saturday.
Not good. Not good.
And what was a fantastic baseball season. They did everything right. Again, you do what your partners in the networks want for that. Still. You got a tied series, too.
Yeah, I, full disclosure, did not watch a second of either game.
Just highlights.
I've been being completely honest when I said my baseball season ended in joy when I saw the Phillies lose in Game 7. That was the last thing I wanted to see accomplished after they knocked out the Braves. When that happened, don't really care about the Diamondbacks or the Rangers. Congrats to both of them. Great season, great story. For the Diamondbacks eking into the playoffs and going on this run. And they may be World Series champion, which is cool, but don't care.
You make anything of the Denver?
See how we can be honest on this
Yeah,
show?
I know.
Unlike coaches that have to
this was
either go silent or not say anything at all to not get fined about officiating.
We
I can just come on here and tell you I don't care about the World Series.
By the way, here's how much we could predict this. It didn't matter if Arizona or Philly won Game 7. We were going to see these numbers, right? We're going to be comparing it to the lowest ever. And Game 1 was those numbers. I mean, awful. Now, can you get a Game 6 or a Game 7 and actually hype this up? Not to the level where it's going to raise the overall average. No. How about the Chiefs losing to Denver?
That was
San Francisco
shocking.
losing their third straight.
I was hoping for snow in that game. I was all into Colorado State Air Force on a Saturday night with the snow game going on, and then the snow was out of there before their game. Hunt, I'm trying to get the pretty big story going on with a quarterback trade, but I'm trying to get confirmation right now. And Dave, if you can look at this too. CJ Golson is reporting something. He's got 7,000 followers.
Oh, he's looking up right now. He's. We'll find out here. Give us the break. We're going to confirm or.
Okay.
Or,
the Vikings may have their quarterback.
Or destroy this report. I don't know. Davey's
well, either way,
skeptical.
I've said the name. CJ Golson, you're on the line, buddy. We'll find out after the break if you're legit or not. Kelly in Vegas also. Kelly in Vegas retweeted this guy. He is an international insider, college football coverage, the People's Insider, 7,000 followers.
Which message board does he post on?
Hopefully it's VolQuest.
College football playoff
right.
picks next too.
I'm here at the Big Machine Music City Grand Prix, but that's not the only big race that's on people's minds. Let's go talk about it.
There's no way Biden can win again. There's just no way. Even the people that voted for him because they didn't like Trump, now at least have to see like senile, not all there. Probably won't be alive for 4 more years.
Are you a Trump guy? Or are you a DeSantis guy? Or someone else?
I don't like any of them.
Who's your dream candidate? Who would you want to run?
Myself. I think the best candidates probably are smart enough not to run.
I just hope there's somebody that's young enough to care about the country instead of their politics.
My fear is they get Gavin Newsom from California. And I think it would be the new cool vote for the younger people, and that's what I don't like.
Who do you think on the Republican side would be able to take on Gavin Newsom?
Great question. As a Republican registered, I love what Trump's body of work did, but they're just out to get him and destroy him, and we won't get things done, which is crappy for me to say. I thought DeSantis was going to be the guy. Trump only has 4 years left. He cannot fix everything that just happened in 4 years. And he's going to be battling indictments and all these false stuff for the next 4 years. We won't get anything done. And it'll just be the stalemate in America. That's why I almost don't want him in. But if he is the leading candidate, that's who I'm going to vote for.
Is there any Democrat that you would vote for, consider voting for?
Absolutely not.
What about RFK Jr.?
No.
Who should our first female president be?
Michelle Obama, of course. Okay. Yeah.
I'm going to go with Harambe 2024.
We have the 2024 presidential race coming up, and I wanted to see who you thought your favorite TV characters would vote for. Homer Simpson, like who do you think he would vote for?
Donald Trump, all the way.
Vito Corleone.
Whoa. Whoever advances the cause of the Corleone family. Yeah.
Tony Soprano. If Tony Soprano is voting in the 2024 election, who do you think he's voting for?
I'm going to go Ron DeSantis.
Okay, why do you think that?
Just seems like a Ron DeSantis kind of guy.
Is this a meatball joke that you're trying to make right now? What about Homer Simpson?
Homer would vote for Biden because he's a dope.
Who do you think Napoleon Dynamite would vote for?
That's a good question. I actually don't know.
There's a right answer here.
He's voting for himself or Pedro.
There's a Viking show, I think.
Okay.
Maybe that's Hulu. I don't know.
So in the Viking show, whatever the main character is, who do you think they would vote for in 2024?
Probably a goat or a dog.
I think we have one of those in office right now. So who do you think Jon Snow would vote for in this upcoming election?
I'm going to say Donald J. Trump.
Why do you think so?
because Game of Thrones is all about drama, and Trump comes with the drama, baby.
Would you vote for Trump from jail?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, probably. Because at that point, what else do you have to lose?
Okay, would you vote for Trump from a jail cell?
Yeah, baby, I will get Trump out of jail.
Would you vote for Trump in jail?
Oh, yeah.
Based as
The thing that Trump needs to remember is there's another political figure that said, I don't recall very well. Yeah. And that's all he's got to say.
Is there like a dream candidate, someone that you think could like save us all?
Yeah, Jesus.
Amen to that.
Coming up in several minutes, but that's my quarterback. Chad, do the Vikings have theirs after Cousins goes down with an Achilles?
I don't know.
I know.
It's a kind of a report, but not really. It's from this guy, C.J. Golson, who Davey says is a fraud and not highly accurate. And he basically says there's a strong desire on both sides to get a deal done for Jameis Winston to go to the Vikings.
Okay.
I mean, that's one that's easily, you just move along if it doesn't happen, right? So who knows?
That's right. And I've been just going through some of the trades today. You've got, Davey, you said the defensive lineman is headed where?
The Giants are sending Leonard to
Leonard
Seattle.
Williams?
No, not Leonard Williams. Sorry. It was, oh gosh, you put me on the spot and I forgot. They're trading.
Yeah, because I had mentioned Leonard Williams earlier. I don't think it was him. Anyway, we'll update that too. So,
David, you want to elaborate on your guy, C.J. Golson?
Yeah.
Oh, it was Leonard Williams.
Thank
okay.
you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
I wanted to clarify that. It was Leonard Williams, and he's headed to Seattle. So, yeah. And they've already agreed to terms.
Yeah, it was in exchange for a 2024 second-round pick and a 2025 fifth-round pick, and Rapp put that one out. And, yeah, Chad, on the trade of Jameis Winston potentially going to Minnesota, the guy that put that out there, it's one of those guys that just tweets a lot, puts a lot of stuff out there, but he never really is able to back it up with sources and just simply has a very bad record when it comes to being right on these things.
Well, I blame Kelly in Vegas on this one. That's who I follow. She reposted it. So when she joins us on Friday, I'll ask her about it.
Yeah,
Say, who are you following and why are you giving me
that is
erroneous information?
That is kind of the level, though, of quarterback that they'd be able to go grab right now. Is Tannehill healthy? What's up with Kyler Murray in the desert? You don't want that contract, right? So you would want a quarterback on an expiring contract or a 2-year deal with an option, So, I mean, I can connect the dots with it. I can't get on board until we see the main guys send this stuff out. So, we'll see. I don't know what do the Vikings just sell now, Chad? Are you just sellers when you have Cousins go down with the Achilles and you have a 5th-round rookie as your starter moving forward right now?
I mean, yeah. Unless you've got some viable diamond in the rough option out there, Matt Ryan going to come out of the CBS booth
from 1-4 to 4-4
and come help you. I don't know. I mean, if there's something you feel like's legitimate, that's going to be anywhere close to Kirk Cousins. It's just not. To me, that's not realistic right now, especially the way Cousins was playing, which was great.
Yeah, but they were winning, trending in the right direction in a division that they could go grab, believe it or not, as they win in Week 8, and then the Achilles injury. Chad, college football playoff, the committee gives their first rankings, and we get a snapshot of how they view certain teams and resumes right now. Because starting tomorrow night, it's tough if you're number 1 or number 2, to fall out and have people jump you just based on wins, right? The resumes, though, are difficult, or they were certainly difficult 3 weeks ago. More clarity now, but still some foggy areas. Let's see where you and I agree or disagree with the college football playoff currently and see what happens and compare to what the committee might do. I've got Florida State as my number 4 team in the country right now. All they have to do is just to continue to do what they're doing, and they're in. Resume-wise, consistency, overall play, I've got them at number 4, squarely in, not by much, but I'm certain that the Seminoles deserve a spot, and I've got them at number 4 in my college football playoff, unveiled through the lens of the very first ranking starting tomorrow.
Nice. We're going to my number 4 now?
Yes.
Is that what we're doing? Okay, my number 4, the Washington Huskies, the team that I thought had a great shot at winning the national championship coming into the season. They would be higher on this list. You can argue they've got the best win with the win over Oregon of any of these teams, although there's some other pretty impressive wins, including a couple road ones that I'm going to talk about. But they have not looked the same the last couple of weeks, squeaking one out over Arizona State. Really a dropped, easy screen pass completion against Stanford, and the Cardinals maybe going down to win that game. Instead, Washington ends up pulling away. Haven't looked quite as impressive. The only thing keeping them from being higher on my list, but I've got the Huskies at number 4.
Number 3 for me, Ohio State. Buckeyes. They have a lot to prove to me. But even in games where it's tight and it shouldn't be, they're 4-0 in games where they've scored 24 or less this year. It's an odd dynamic when you consider that the defense in recent playoff hopes and years has been the issue. I think that improves them in the minds of the table I'm sitting in or at, and I've got the Buckeyes in right now, and I know as I look ahead that things will begin to sort itself out based on head-to-head matchups.
My number 3 team, the Florida State Seminoles. Okay. I think they got the best percentage chance to get to the college football playoff given what they have left. They play Miami. They play at Florida. I think they win those games. They won at Clemson already earlier this year. The Tigers, not what they've been. ACC not looking great right now. Florida State's got that one great win early in the first week of the season, neutral site against LSU, and they pulled away and won big in that one. For that reason, I'm giving them the edge over Washington, and they're my number 3 team in this college football playoff ranking.
Michigan for me at number 2. And I'm doing the same thing that the other polls have done, but I'm also looking at it through this lens. We're going to see the head-to-head with Michigan and Ohio State. We know that. We'll see the winner move on to the Big Ten championship game. And then if more details come out, I allow that to affect where I've got them ranked. They're good enough. The resume is good enough to be number 1. So where does the committee put them tomorrow? Where traditionally it hasn't been a committee that really moves things around based on both teams winning if you're comparing things, right? Number 2 versus number 3. Number 2 versus number 4. There's not a lot of jumping around. This is the one program that could. I'm not willing to do it yet. Simply put, they deserve to be in the college football playoff based on what I've seen them do and the resume that's in front of me, which is about the college football playoff and winning a national title. When more things arise, that's when you make a move. And until others make a move, they're allowed to be in this. And based on what they've done on the field, they should be.
I think we could say about all of this, it's all going to work itself out. I'm not overly concerned about the first ranking. Teams will lose. And it won't be a huge controversy come the end of the day once we get to the playoff. But in Michigan, Ohio State's one of those great factors that will play itself out. My number 2 team, one of the participants in that matchup, the Ohio State Buckeyes.
Okay.
It's not been particularly pretty at times for Ohio State this year, but they have got a dominating defense that has looked great. Saw that against Notre Dame. Saw that against Penn State. They've got the big road win at Notre Dame. They got a big home win against Penn State. Their schedule's been far tougher than Michigan so far. Even though Michigan's looked great blowing teams out, they haven't beaten anybody. So I give the edge here to Ohio State, who's got 2 really good wins on the season. Buckeyes at number 2.
Georgia's the number 1 team for me. And, Chad, the Bulldogs, we're about to see the schedule really jump up from what it's been. And I understand what the Michigan faithful will say. Well, you want to compare resumes. We're boat racing teams. Meanwhile, when Georgia should be, they haven't been. Okay. I think what we've seen recently, though, is Georgia snapping into it. And then moving forward, they're about to prove it. And if they don't, they can fall back to 3, 4, and teams can jump ahead of them. But until then, preseason team is the current team, and I've got Georgia number 1.
Yeah, I'm with you, Hutton. I got Georgia number 1, 2-time defending national champion. To me, I know it probably doesn't for the committee, does play a factor. They are the champs until proven otherwise. All this talk about Georgia not looking that impressive, that's true. They had covered the spread one time until they did it a second time on Saturday against Florida, and they're one of 6 teams that only covered one time. They haven't played many close games. Just because they're not covering the spread, the spreads are gigantic when Georgia plays. They had one close game at Auburn, won that game on the road. The Bulldogs Prove It Tour starts this week. They get 1 loss Missouri. They've got 1 loss Ole Miss. Mm-hmm. They go to 2 loss Tennessee coming up. That's the toughest part of their schedule, which is pretty weak for an SEC schedule this year. I think they continue to prove it, though. And so far, from what I've seen, they're still the number 1 team in the country.
Chad, where would they be in the eyes of the committee if they're not preseason number 1? Where would they rank in this 4-pack? If
3 or 4?
Yeah.
I mean, being an undefeated
right.
team in the SEC,
yeah.
I think probably 3. It's not a huge difference.
Beating Kentucky
and
by
again,
38.
all this stuff is going to work
winning by
itself
23
out.
over Florida. I mean, again, Georgia's going to be where they should be, and it's atop the college football playoff with the first rankings. Just outside my college football playoff right now, and we'll compare who's 5 and who's 6, just missing. I've got Washington and Oregon. And one of these teams, to me, is going to be the 4th team in the playoff when it's all said and done. In mine. And I think Florida State moves up, by the way, in my rankings. I've got them at 4.
I still think the Pac-12 is a really good conference, so I could not penalize the Pac-12 by not having at least one team in that top 4. Chose Washington being undefeated and having beaten Oregon. I got Michigan on the outside looking in right now, and it's not necessarily because of the scandal around them, although that does not help in my eyes for Michigan. The fact is they haven't beaten anybody. Their schedule's been incredibly weak up to this point. They get their chances to prove it. They go to Penn State. They've got Ohio State at the end of the year, but I've got them 5 for that reason. And then 1 loss Oregon that took that close loss to Washington and has just gotten better and better each week since, culminating in that blowout win in Salt Lake City on Saturday. I really like this Oregon team. They look like an SEC team physically in the way they play defense, located in the Pacific Northwest, only Pacific Northwest, because that's where they are geographically. They're SEC in every other way with Dan Lanning as their coach. I like Oregon having a real shot at getting to that playoff also, but my 5 and 6, Michigan, Oregon.
The final thing in this discussion, and I like that. And I like what you said. So Michigan's, you're not factoring in anything off the field here.
It doesn't help me.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not going to lie and say the human nature part of it doesn't have me putting them at 5 a little bit for that reason. But the main reason is because they haven't gotten to the meat of their schedule yet where they're going to play some teams that could actually beat them. They have not faced a single team that has any chance at beating them. Ohio State's faced 2 of them. Washington's faced at least 1 of them.
Yes.
Everyone else on there, I mean, Georgia, yes, but Georgia's 2-time defending national champion that hasn't really been challenged other than the 1 game at Auburn.
Well, South Carolina was up 11.5.
South Carolina was, they ended up winning by 2 scores.
They did. But
2 or 3 scores.
But that was a challenge. I mean, again.
No, that's true.
We've seen more from Beck since then, but he also showed us a lot in that moment coming out of half, just pointing that part out. The other here, where would Oklahoma be had they not lost this weekend for you? To me, that I would have them at 5.
Yeah, they would have been. That would have pushed, for me, that would have pushed Oregon out.
Okay.
And I probably would have had Michigan 5, Oklahoma 6. So it would have been right there with Oregon moving out.
Yeah, and I've got Oklahoma out. You know, they just never looked superior against Kansas. And, 1 loss, whatever. I say Texas can win the Big 12, yes. Oklahoma, they lost a lot to me in the eyes of the college football playoff on Saturday. Davey, let's have the quarterback discussion coming up in a moment because I want to mention, so how much of the public perception of the story, Chad, the Michigan story, factors into the room tomorrow? on the rankings. And here's let me go a layer deeper on what I'm asking. If there was a clamoring for a penalty, I hear it in the media, right? I don't know if college football fans truly believe that this is so egregious from what they perceived it to be. And I get it. There's a rule book that's vague on one end and, very specific about using equipment on the other. But if you believe that your team's also doing the same thing, they're just in a T-shirt and they're using a fan, is the college football selection committee factoring in the sentiment of what the public wants here?
I think
because I don't.
They got to be very clear about this.
But they will based on where they rank
more
Michigan.
about it, but I'm saying they have to have a policy here. This has to be courtroom-like. This either is stricken from the record or it's not. And I think your public stance when that committee chairman talks on ESPN, you have to say we cannot factor in ongoing NCAA investigations, or you be honest and say, hey, that sign stealing scandal probably factored in with where we put Michigan in this first one. It's got to be either or.
But
I don't think you can dance on either side of this if you're the committee.
But we will know based on where they are ranked tomorrow night.
I think that
they will be telling us that.
They're going to interview whoever it is in charge of it. They better have their T's crossed and their I's dotted. And they better have a united front of it factors in or it doesn't. Or that is another scandal we're talking about if they don't have that.
Yep. Quarterback discussion, injuries in the NFL and more straight ahead.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the #1 overall pick.
Is it fair for people to be upset with Barbie?
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna lib. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose. I mean, what have you seen firsthand of how this has affected you in the plant and your fellow employees? Under Joe Biden, the Taliban has retaken Afghanistan. Putin has invaded Ukraine. So if there was ever a time for freaking aliens to inhabit and conquer Earth, now would be that time.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
I made the call to end the Me Too movement. And today I'm going to continue making that case. And that's just a way to further taunt these women, to make them feel less than, to make them realize that this has just become a big joke. Deion Sanders is the Donald Trump of football.
We were directly impacted by the whole Leah Thomas thing, and we were able to see you guys on the ground with your signs supporting. That was huge.
They were saying, oh, it's only 1 or 2. That's rubbish, and we all know that's rubbish. Once those trans-identifying males were able to succeed, it just encouraged others.
6th, the Peabody location with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Chad, tonight, Monday Night Football.
Monday Night Football.
Detroit hosting Las Vegas.
Detroit, as Canadians
Lions
say.
favored by 8 against the Raiders.
Yeah.
I'm going to make things very difficult for Vikings fans. I want to see the Raiders pull the road upset. That's not going to happen here. Detroit is going to help the Vikings in their decision to not make a trade and to just move forward, soldier forward, knowing that you're going to have a rookie or a much better option and cheaper, more affordable option in 2024 moving forward, because I think Detroit wins and they separate the NFC North a little bit there, even though Minnesota's 4-4. It's a difficult choice if you're going to be a buyer or seller if you're Minnesota right now. Chad, if Detroit were to lose this game and you're a game out of first place in the NFC North, all of a sudden, Vikings have to go in on a quarterback, don't they? In this division?
Yes. Yes, they do. But who's the quarterback you go after that's really going to change your fortune? That's the question.
It would be a player like Tannehill if Tannehill wants to play. I'm saying, like, if he tells the Tennessee Titans he wants to play, he's not playing Thursday night on a short week, especially he's not playing on Thursday night because of what Will Levis just did. I'm saying if Tannehill comes to the team and says, "Hey, I'm feeling good.
Yeah,
I'm try to go." Well, you stick with they just had 4 touchdown passes. You had 2 in 6 games. Does Tannehill want to play? Does he want to be traded? Does he want to be traded to a certain team where he could be potentially extended because he's going to be? He knows he's not going to be back here next year in Nashville. That could be a factor all of a sudden. Just throwing that out there. But he's got to be healthy first and foremost. Beyond that, Kyler Murray will be mentioned, but Kyler Murray's contract is going to keep him from being traded. Arizona's going to play him. And after that, Chad, it's guys like Jameis Winston and other backups.
Hutton, did you win wrong team favorite again this weekend?
I did.
Am I remembering that correctly? Good Lord.
I did.
I didn't come close. It was 7-7, close to halftime in my game. But
Arizona beating Oregon State for me.
Troy prevailed. That's getting just ridiculous, absurd with my 0-point total. Are we making our bets for the game tonight that we're doing?
I'm taking Detroit -8.
Hutton, the one thing
at home
that I've been successful doing is anytime touchdown scores. I think I told you last week Dalton Kincaid was going to score a touchdown. He did. I'm going back to the tight end well. Sam Laporta will score a touchdown tonight, +175. That's what's going to happen tonight for the Lions, and mark it down. That is the one winner I will give you all week because we know it will not be in wrong team favor.
If you're in the points per reception, that dude's really helped you. Davey Hudson, he's a massive fantasy football league guru. He knows all things about half point per reception.
He's a guru that's won exactly one fantasy football game like I have this year.
That is not true. I'm at 3.
Oh, congrats.
Oh, you've won 2 in a row?
Yeah, I'm struggling.
Are you counting this week?
I've been mainly shifting my attention to fantasy hockey at this point. Let's put it that way.
Have you fantasy hockey?
Again, fantasy football league guru.
Did you I remember I tried to play fantasy NBA when I was probably 22 years old one time, and it was only one time.
You imagine
I couldn't
imagine
go
the
that
guys
far
that
with
did
it.
this by hand.
Oh my gosh. Like the old board. Now, I did fantasy football 1 year in the 90s. I helped my older sister with a team, and it was the old, like you went to her office, and they put it up on the board, and you got to go do it the old-fashioned way.
If you're joining us on the OutKick Network
Tavy's
on
playing
YouTube,
fantasy hockey.
You're looking at Davey wearing sunglasses. You may think, is this man blind? No, he's not. We explain it right now with that's my quarterback.
I had LASIK.
He's emotionally blind.
It's my quarterback.
Guys, before we get into that, I did finally do the tally.
We did play audio right there, by the way. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I heard it.
Okay.
I heard it. On teams that can win the Super Bowl. And, if you're looking, you need a good quarterback in order to win the Super Bowl. But there's currently 10 teams that did not have or had less than 2 losses in the month of October. Technically, it's 9. It's 10 if Detroit does win tonight.
Okay.
But those teams are the Dallas Cowboys, Philadelphia Eagles, Minnesota Vikings. You're not feeling good about those chances now.
There's going to be one.
Seattle Seahawks. And then from the AFC, the Baltimore Ravens, Cincinnati Bengals, Jacksonville Jaguars, who are the only undefeated team in the month of October, the Kansas City Chiefs, and the New York Football Jets.
I think there are 7 teams that you rattled off right there that absolutely can win the title based on that stat that we threw out.
Including my Jets.
Jags, Bengals, Ravens. You mentioned another AFC team at the very end, their Chiefs. Seahawks, Eagles, Cowboys. I think can all make a run in the postseason. Yes.
But anyway, back to that's my quarterback. We'll get it started. It's a pressure cooker, man. The NFL quarterback that has the most pressure on their shoulders entering Week 9.
I'll begin. Desmond Ridder. I do think that Desmond Ridder was pulled for performance yesterday. Maybe looking at a concussion also had something to do with it, but he didn't look right, according to Arthur Smith, because he's not been good here recently. And I thought that their offense got a little boost when they went to Taylor Heineke in the second half against the Titans. So he should be good to go. He's cleared concussion protocol. I know Arthur Smith said all the right things about him. They still have faith in him. They believe in him. He's still their guy. He needs to prove it. I think he's under some pressure right now.
Good one. I think it's Derek Carr. I'm staying in the same division. Derek Carr, who rebounded from some bad performances. They rebounds from a tough week, and the Saints beat the Colts. And stat line's great, all that. But I'm looking at the overall division right now. And if you look at the standings, they're at 4-4, the Saints. Falcons are at 4-4 after the loss. Bucks are at 3-4. Panthers at 1-6 after beating Houston. Carr's supposed to be the difference in New Orleans. He was the quiet addition of the offseason. And it was new place, fresh start. There's pressure now to have that turn into more than what it's been. Finish the season strong as you enter the second half. Make the Saints a playoff team in a bad division.
Guys, trade deadline's tomorrow. So who is most likely to get traded?
Most likely, Chad, to me,
it's someone going to Minnesota.
Is to Minnesota?
Can we agree?
I think
with
most
that?
likely is Jerry Jeudy.
Just quarterbacks.
Just quarterbacks.
Just quarterbacks. I'm going with one of these two.
Okay.
It's Ryan Tannehill if his ankle is okay enough to play soon. I think it's a possibility to Minnesota. Again, I'm going Minnesota as the team that's going to do it. The other one that I'll throw out there that is currently third string with the Houston Texans is Case Keenum, who has done good things in Minnesota before. That would be an easy one to acquire if you're looking for an extra body that can come in and possibly help you. Hutton, I look at it, though, there's not a lot of names out there that I'm getting stoked about. If I'm the Vikings, maybe Tannehill, he's probably at the top of my list of guys actively in the league that can possibly keep things going and get you in the playoffs. But, unless Matt Ryan's in perfect shape and can pick up that O'Connell offense immediately and play great, I don't know that I'm excited about any of these names.
Well, it would be those. It would be, to me, Case Keenum is a player coach right now. That's I don't know if McClain would agree with that, but that's the lens. But also, dude wants to play, right? There you go. What about Ridder? What about Malik Willis? Again, just throwing out some backup young options on rookie deals. And if you're looking at the veterans would be guys like Jacoby Brissett, Andy Dalton. What does Dallas think about Trey Lance? Again, just throwing out names that have been traded before or have bounced around the league a bit. I don't think it's the massive starter that is going to be used as a debate headline-worthy topic like Kyler Murray because of the contract.
Yeah, Dr. Chow said there could be 11 quarterbacks that are backups actually starting come Week 9. So, again, I know not all of those are definitely season-ending injuries, but it will be a main talking point going into the deadline tomorrow. But, guys, speaking of those injuries, call the doctor. Which quarterback injury is impacting team success the most? Now, I know we could all just sit here and say, yeah, it's going to be Kirk Cousins with Minnesota. So I decided I would give you some options.
Okay.
And those options are Kenny Pickett, Desmond Ridder, and Tyrod Taylor. Sorry, Tyrod Taylor.
It's Kenny Pickett because of the news today. First off, impact success, you could look at it one of two ways. There's a chance that Heineke impacts the Falcons' success in a positive way, not a negative way.
Yeah.
So I could argue that I don't think Desmond Ritter's hurt, first off. So he's going to be able to play. So it's not
was
really
cleared to
injury.
return.
He was
You're
cleared
right.
to return. He's cleared to play Sunday. So it's not really an injury impact to the team, but it could be Heineke in for Ritter. We know Daniel Jones is back. He's been cleared to play. He's going to play moving forward, so they get their starter back. So I'm not going to go with the Giants. It is Trubisky coming in for Kenny Pickett. But Hutton, again, I watched Kenny Pickett's play at times, and I'm thinking, is this going to help or hurt Pittsburgh moving forward if Trubisky's now the starter? I don't really know, and I was a guy who was a big believer in Pickett before.
Yeah, I mean, so what's hurting
It's a tough one
Pittsburgh
to
is,
answer.
I guess, Matt Canada. You're still going to have the same guy
Blame
regardless,
Canada.
right? I'm going with Taylor because the Giants were actually playing better, and now they're down to DeVito, and they're coming off of a game where Tyrod Taylor's hurt, and the game featured more combined punts, 24, than combined points, 23. And losing again to the Jets in this game, Davey. I'm going Tyrod Taylor because, again, they were playing better than what they were. And there was at least a little spark of, is Taylor better than the multimillionaire that just got the big extension in the offseason and Daniel Jones? I wasn't buying it, but I think it hurts the team the most because they were actually having different results.
Okay, glad to get some differing opinions on that one. I like the assessment of both of your all's options, both your all's picks. And then finally, to bring us home, which rookie quarterback will have the best career? And I gave you giving you the quarterbacks that were drafted within the first 2 rounds of the 2023 NFL Draft that include Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, Anthony Richardson, and Will Levis. And I'm curious to see if recency bias is going to be playing into your all's decision.
It will not play into my
No.
decision. It's C.J. Stroud.
Yes.
From what I've seen so far, he has been the most consistent. He's looked the best. There's a bigger body of work for him in the NFL so far. I'm not going to be totally fooled by one game from Will Levis, albeit a great performance by Will Levis. Certainly not going to be overly fooled by the first win of Bryce Young's career, even though it was head-to-head with C.J. Stroud. I think it's close between Stroud and Young. I still really like Bryce Young.
Bryce Young 1, C.J.
Will
Stroud
Levis
0
third,
right now.
C.J. Stroud. I'm going C.J. Stroud. Hudson.
Chad, I agree. C.J. Stroud because of I still feel the same way that I did prior to the draft about what he is and all of the BS and all the talk that was right before the draft about whether or not the guy was smart enough to play quarterback based on a test score. And the new testing that was done at the combine. Like, when's the last time we heard about that? Well, it was April and May, because since then, the guy's been on the scene and producing multiple times. Levis has done it once. He certainly can prove us wrong. Bryce Young needs help. And Anthony Richardson, whenever he is available again, is he going to stay healthy? Probably not. You know, that also is a trend for quarterbacks, if you can stay healthy or not. That's a skill. Richardson's got to figure that part out. Right now, and for me, the answer is Stroud in Houston.
Okay. I would actually take Bryce Young, and it's more of a knock on the Texans organization, the fact that they've never had a franchise quarterback in that organization. And
right.
I think coming off a bye, not being able to beat that Panthers defense is very concerning.
Both teams coming off the bye, too, in that.
And I just think right now,
how many
when you look
straight
at the weapons,
division titles did they win in Houston with Deshaun Watson?
3.
Yeah, was it 3 or 4?
I mean, I would say that's a. Now they couldn't hold on to him. They couldn't keep him happy.
They did sign him, and then they signed him in September.
Yeah,
and demanded
I think
a trade in
Deshaun
January.
Watson was a franchise quarterback in a top 5 or 10 in the league for a while,
and he wanted out because
then he wanted out.
The team had no leadership at the top. And
I get what you're saying,
true,
Davey. I don't believe in the Panthers organization either.
I'd take
to any
Cam
great
Newton's
extent.
career, Jake Delhomme's career over any of the quarterbacks that we've seen.
We did see
the
the greatest debut yesterday, Will Levis ascends to the top.
It was something else.
Yeah, it was. The reaction feels like SEC Media Days too.
Didn't have
Kentucky
any
2 years ago.
mayo in his coffee before that game either. So that's my reporters are telling me that.
Back at it tomorrow, 3 to 6 Eastern, right here on the OutKick Network for Hot Mic.